Hi, everyone. My name is John DeLynn. I want to welcome you today to the premiere of my Mormon Stories podcast interview with Heather Gay and Dre Nord of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Because I'm imagining that the show is going to pull to the podcast some viewers who are not familiar with Mormon Stories podcast, I just wanted to take 30 seconds to let you know. My name is Dr. John DeLynn. I've been doing a podcast called Mormon Stories Podcast for 15 years. The purpose of the podcast is to explore Mormon culture, Mormon history. It's basically to talk about all the difficult things in Mormonism that you can't talk about as a Mormon at church. So that's what Mormon Stories Podcast is. We have almost 1,400 hours of interviews with Mormons and post-Mormons and ex-Mormons. We cover all the interesting and controversial issues of faith, Joseph Smith, Mormon church history, excommunications, feminism, racism, homophobia, LGBTQ issues, faith crisis issues, transition issues. We cover the gamut. If you want to check out any of our past episodes, you can go to mormonstories.org. You can also go to our YouTube channel, and we also have a Facebook channel, all called Mormon Stories Podcast. And we'd love to have you. You can always email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. But most importantly, I just want to let you know I'm so excited to have you today. I'm so excited for this interview. Heather and Dre are super thoughtful, wise, courageous, vulnerable women. And their stories particularly inspiring because they've both been through divorces as Mormon women and as Mormon housewives or mothers. And their story of resilience of becoming successful entrepreneurs after their Mormon dreams fell apart is particularly inspiring. So thanks for joining us. Super excited to have you. Love to have you share comments. Please share this right now with as many people as you can on social media, on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook. We'd love to have the biggest audience as we can. We'll take your comments live. And again, without any further ado, please join us now for my interview with Heather Gay and Dre Nord of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, brought to you by BravoTV and Mormon Stories Podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy. I know you will. Thanks, everybody. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It's December 7th, 2020. And today we have, I say this frequently, today I mean it extra specially. Today we have an all-star interview for you. And when I say stars, I really mean it. These really are stars. Today we are interviewing Heather Gay and Dre Nord of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Hey guys.
Hi.
Welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a dream.
Are you guys delighted or terrified?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, easily both.
Easily both, for sure.
No, so I'm going to be honest. This is my first Real Housewives experience in my life. That I hope you guys are mad at me.
John,
for
it's
that.
mine too. It's
Is
mine.
it really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mine too, actually. The first Real Housewives I've ever done.
No, but yeah, I've never seen it before. But we're 4 episodes into this season, and it's a show. For those of you who don't know, Real Housewives, we'll talk about it, but it's a show where they pick around 6 housewives, and it's kind of reality TV, free for all, a lot of fun, a lot of interesting personalities, a little bit of drama. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And covering a lot of really real and important themes. And it turns out I have a personal connection to some members of the cast this year, and I won't give any spoilers away, but I've watched 4 episodes. The 5th episode is coming soon. And it's going to be dealing with, there are the Real Housewives of Salt Lake has several either current or former members of the LDS Church, along with some people who have never been Mormon before, but all of them right now are living in Salt Lake City. And it's kind of a little bit different for Salt Lake City, and it's different for the LDS Church to be profiled in this way. And so we are not going to be focusing on the actual show today. We're going to be focusing on the stories of Heather Gay and Dre Nord. Heather is one of the 6 Real Housewives, and then they're allowed to bring on their friends In this case, Dre is business partners with Heather, and we're going to talk about that. And it's quite an inspiring story because these are resilient women who have inspiring stories as women and as entrepreneurs. And on Mormon Stories podcast, it is such a real deal. We have so many women who, once the faith crisis happened to them or their spouses or their families, they weren't always left in the best situation. And some women are left really having to scramble and scrape to figure out what their life is going to be once their world is turned upside down. And for me, I'm most excited. It's great to have celebrities in the studios, but what I'm most excited about is that we have two women who represent strength and resilience, and they have inspiring stories. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Heather and Dre, they're best friends, they're business partners. And without any further ado, let's get started.
Let's do it. We're excited.
Okay, anything you want to correct about my intro or add or take away?
No.
Did we mention Bravo? Did I mention Bravo?
Well, Real Housewives is on BravoTV. And in the first episode, I think they said the word Mormon like at least 40 times. So,
Yeah.
Mormonism is a character in the show. And it's as much as it's been, I wouldn't even say character, a current thread in the show, as much as it's been, the thread of my entire life. So like people have criticized like us talking too much about Mormonism, but it's informed every choice I've ever made. And so if you're going to do a show with me on it, Mormonism is going to be a part of it.
And let's face it, they're not going to come to Salt Lake City and not want to talk about Mormonism. That's like I watched Survivor. Margie and I have watched like 10 seasons of Survivor. They love Mormons on Survivor. Like,
We're good at surviving, aren't we?
Almost every episode of Survivor, season of Survivor has Mormons on it, and they want you to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Well, the truth is, Real Housewives is kind of like Survivor and Minute to Win It with Project Runway, like all combined. So it's all kind of fast-paced, Survivor type mentality. So reality TV, for what it is, like you cannot have a show in Salt Lake City and not address Mormonism.
Yeah. And it's good. I think it's good for our culture to have sunlight. And they say sunlight is the best disinfectant. So here we go. You guys ready?
We're ready.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to do is we're going to tell two stories in parallel because these are best friends, these are business partners, and their stories start out separate, but then they converge and then things get really interesting. And so what we're going to do is kind of like go through different phases of their lives and go back and forth. And then once the story merges, then we'll just have a natural kind of 1 to 2 interview. But whose story should we start first?
I think probably mine because I went through my faith crisis sooner than Heather did. So that makes most sense to me. Does that work?
Yeah. Since I'm midstream right now.
She's midstream. She's in it. She's in the thick of it. But I think Heather and I have always, first of all, let's just say how we met, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because both of our oldest daughters went to school together. They were best friends in elementary school. But by the time I met Heather, I was already out of the church. I was a single divorced mom. And
we're going to back up and tell your story. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we kind of ran in different circles because Heather was the Relief Society president or gospel doctrine teacher at the time.
Yeah. Or
both. Yeah. One of those. And so we ran in different circles, and I never would have known that Heather and I had such similar upbringings and that we were so similar in just our history and the way that we see the world because we were so different.
And the way we practice our faith.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say Heather was the exact type of Mormon that I was. I was raised, I grew up in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, right outside of DC, but to very, very faithful, devout parents. I used to call us fundamentalist Mormon, but now I am transitioning that to like more doctrinal Mormon. It was really intense, the kind of Mormonism that we practiced. It was very, very much based on doctrine. And I am a rule follower. And I was teasing you before, John, about, you've questioned things since the beginning. I didn't question. I just did what I was told and I believed it and I loved it. And
how many siblings?
I'm the oldest of 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I assume one of your parents was working in government somewhere?
Yeah. So my dad, he didn't work exactly in the government, but he worked for a company that did that was contracted by the government. And that's why we ended up moving to Virginia when I was 8. We lived in Northern California and then moved to Virginia. And it was a really great place to grow up. I loved it. And I mean, we were in the same ward as John Huntsman, John Mary Kay were in our ward.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Jeff and Cheryl Flake. Cheryl was my mom's best friend. They were in a cute trio together and they sang at all of these like different Senate dinners and stuff. And it was just.
Jeff Flake was a senator in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
He's been big in the news.
Oh, yeah.
the past
Yeah.
couple
And
years.
I actually really love Jeff.
We're going to name drop a lot, John.
That's great. I love it. I love it.
I mean, you can't not when you like grew up in that area. Like there were, everybody knows the Mormon politicians and they
Mormon royalty, one might say.
Yeah, exactly.
And then be,
And-
hated on by the world.
And I've met John and Mary Kay, and they do listen to Mormon stories.
Oh,
yeah.
well, shout out, guys.
Shout out to the Huntsmans.
I love them. And that was how I grew up. And but it was a different experience, I think, growing up on the East Coast as opposed to growing up in Mormon Utah. But I was very devout. I was early morning seminary president, like all of the things. I'm probably the last person that any of my friends or any of the ward members would have thought could ever leave the church.
What were the types of typical Mormon things that your family did? There's always the scripture study and the evening and the
of
prayer.
course.
Did you guys do all that stuff?
Mhm, yeah, but I feel like my parents took it to the next level. We were only Motab, like when we were
on Sunday?
on Sundays.
Okay.
Yeah.
I prefer
Yeah.
the full official name,
Okay.
Mormon Tabernacle Choir,
Yeah,
if
for-
you don't mind.
Yeah.
We didn't change out of our church clothes on Sundays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
mhm.
intense.
Yeah. But like I had the rule of like I couldn't go on a date with the same person more than twice. But more than that, I was just heavily.
Okay, wait, you got to explain that.
So I couldn't.
This is all over. This is Utah too. Why would your parents not let you go out? and stay
Because
with
they
them?
did not want us, and specifically me, because I had 2 younger brothers between me and my youngest sister. And so I was the only girl for a while. And I think there was a lot of concern that I guess I would like meet a boy and maybe have sex. I never would have, but they just didn't want me to have a boyfriend because they just, law of chastity. It was just too slippery of a slope. And so I was allowed to go on a date with the same boy twice, and then I would have to go out with someone else.
Can I just say, as someone with a psychology PhD, that's a tiny bit unhealthy for me, because if you want to have a successful marriage, you need to learn about emotional intimacy. And to learn about emotional intimacy, you have to develop a medium to a long-term relationship and understand each other, learn to care about each other, learn to communicate. And if you're always chopping up those relationships until you go to BYU, and then you marry the first RM you meet, or University of Utah, wherever you go, then you actually get married never developing some skills of just basic emotional intimacy. Now, I don't want to, fill in your story.
No, but fun fact, I did marry my first boyfriend.
Okay.
So
As
I-
did I.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I guess it worked, mom and dad, but but we did find like great ways to get around that. Like my second boyfriend in high school, and I married the first, but my second boyfriend in high school, he had a good friend who was gay, but he hadn't come out yet. But like I would always go out with him because he was like just our fun, like ballroom dance best friend. And so I would go out with my boyfriend twice, and then I'd go out with our fun friend and just check the box, and that's how we got around it. And
Letter
Kids
of
are
the law, not spirit of the law.
kids are creative, you guys. But yeah, but more than that, like, of course we didn't play sports on Sunday, which was big on the East Coast
Were you
because
into sports?
yeah. But my brothers were more. I played softball and my brothers played baseball and soccer. And that was tough because we would have to initially tell our coaches like, oh, we don't play on Sundays. We're Mormon. That's just not going to happen for us. And I don't know if people in Utah have that same experience. Probably not. But, it was just part of my whole life. And all of my friends were just the girls in my ward. I was incredibly shy. And so I didn't really have a lot of friends in school. And I heavily relied on the church for everything, for my social circle. My best friend and I sat on the Interfaith Youth Council of DC. We were the 2 Mormon representatives all through high school. And that was a wonderful experience. I loved being the Mormon representative for that because I was able to be exposed to, different religions and different cultures, but also kind of push my own agenda. And it fed my need to be right. And I was able to, even though I appreciated seeing everything else, it just reaffirmed my faith that like, this is the right way. This is it. And I remember having a conversation with my friend who was on the council with me, and she said something to me like, oh, don't you think it's so sad that like they seem so happy, but they just don't even know. They don't know the truth. And that was truly how I felt. And I felt a little sadness too, of gosh, you know, I have it all. I have all of the secrets, and these people are so good. They're so wonderful, but they don't know what I know. And that was very much the type of Mormon that I was. And
I just jump in. I grew up in Texas, in Houston, Texas, but I know a lot about these Maryland and Virginia Mormon wards. They're a lot of powerful, kind, important, good people. So these Virginia and Maryland wards are very strong. Marriott's are there, Huntsman's are there, Orrin Hatch is there. It's like political royalty, Harry Reid. All these people, and then, but the wards. Number one, it's so cool to feel so special. You're in, Utah calls it abroad or in the mission field,
right?
And that means outside of Utah, but so you're in these really powerful, fast moving places, but you feel special and better than everybody. And it gives you this sense of a little bit of persecution, but also of superiority, where you're in the minority, but you're better than everybody. And then you've just got these intense, high functioning wards with a lot of affluent families, great activities, great youth programs. And they're amazing. It really is an amazing way to grow up. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I loved it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Yeah.
And it was actually quite a culture shock when I moved to Utah, my senior year of high school. It was actually devastating because the church was so different here. And the social aspect of it was so different here because I was, of course, like I said, I was really, really shy, but I was very nervous about moving to a new school when I was 17 years old and, just barely coming into my own. And then I just kept thinking, okay, I'm going to have the girls in my ward. I'll have the girls in my ward. And I didn't have the girls in my ward.
Different.
It was totally different. We moved to Alpine and
before you graduated.
Before I graduated. Okay. Yeah. We moved to Alpine. So I did my senior year at Lone Peak the year it opened.
What a culture shock.
It was a real culture shock, and it was hard. It was really tough on me.
What's the difference? How would you describe the difference between Alpine high schools and Virginia high schools?
Well, first of all, it was all white people.
Yeah.
That was the biggest thing. Like I grew up in a predominantly Arab and Persian area of Northern Virginia. Yeah. And so I was used to a lot of diversity, and I was used to being special because everyone did know that I was the Mormon. Like there were only 13 or 14 of us, I think, at our high school. It was a smaller high school for that area. And everybody knew that that's what we were, and we didn't party, and we went to early morning seminary and all of those things. And that was so much of my identity. That was my identity. And so when I came to Utah, I didn't have that anymore. So I was like, well, what am I? Because I'm just
like everybody else.
I'm like everyone else. And I truly did. It really was like, I'll have the girls in my ward because those were my best friends, even if they didn't go to my high school, because our ward pulled from like 3 different high schools.
In Virginia.
Yeah. Then when I moved to Utah, I was like, okay, well, at least I'll have some built-in friends. And I really didn't. I had to fend for myself.
Wards can be cliquey.
Oh, and my ward, whew, it was rough.
A lot of these Utah areas have had families living for generations in the same ward. And so everybody, you got your set of friends. They're even, sometimes girls and maybe even boys can be really protective about who's in the clique and who's not.
And the parents are super protective.
Yeah.
I feel like absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, who is that? I don't know her.
Yeah.
And it can leave your kids, and my kids got this really bad because here I am, a Mormon podcaster in Utah, and the parents are like, I don't know, stay away from him. And so our kids often felt excluded in their own ward, and it was kind of sad. So
yeah, I definitely experienced that. And Alpine's no exception to that, as far as like legacy families that have been there forever, and they all already had their friends and their grandparents grew up together and all of those things. And I think Alpine's different now, but just because it's grown so much. But in the late 90s, that was my reality. So that's kind of how I grew up. Do you want me to,
Yeah. Okay. Let's
kick it to Heather and she can fill in her growing up?
I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your upbringing, but after. So let's bring Heather in.
Okay.
Heather, have you do the same thing.
Okay.
Take us up to just painting the picture of kind of your upbringing. And then we're going to jump back and talk about any like big dramatic things that happened in high school or college. And we'll kind of go back and forth. So Heather, give us kind of the same background from your perspective.
Okay. I grew up for the most part, in Denver, Colorado. Oh. And my parents were both absolutely devout, committed, creative, cool Mormons, and my identity was very much one of like a superiority. We were Mormons, and we were not only Mormons, we were cool Mormons. We were beautiful Mormons. We were successful Mormons. We were
How many kids?
6 kids.
Whoa. And you were in the birth order?
I'm the middle daughter. So I'm the third child and I'm the second daughter. So there's 3 boys and 3 girls.
And your maiden name, are you okay?
Yeah, it's Deans, Heather Deans.
Deans.
Yeah.
And what did your parents do work with?
So my dad, he had a background in government and he worked for the FBI. I was born in California. He was at the Language Institute in Monterey. Oh, yeah. And nice. Did kind of cool things, like Russian espionage. Then he parlayed that into a Bureau of Land Management. He discovered Indian artifacts. He was just a cool guy. And then he had then transitioned into an oil and gas company. And that's what he primarily did when we were in Colorado. And I grew up, I thought I grew up superior for sure. I felt wealthy. I felt sad for people that weren't Mormon. I remember his business partner at one point was trying to adopt a child. They were struggling with infertility, and I don't know the context of it, but I remember we brought them over. We sang "As I've Loved You." We were hooking them up with LDS Social Services. And I just remember thinking, and I was probably 10, maybe 9, thinking, I feel so bad for them. I felt bad for anyone. And I thought, they're going to see our family. They're going to feel our love. They're going to feel the spirit. And they're going to be like, teach me more. That's how I approached everything. Kind of like I was, advertising the church by the idyllic childhood I had.
Every member a missionary, right?
Every member a missionary.
Especially in the mission field. That is I think, right? We can all identify with that. At least I totally can.
Totally. I mean, it was my whole world. My best friends were Mormon. My dad was my soccer coach. My sister was seminary president. I remember my mom, my little brother was born while, he's 10 years younger than me. And I remember it was a Sunday and my dad had taken us all to church and he wanted to stop at El Pollo Loco on the way home. And I, as a child, was thrilled, because we're getting takeout food on a Sunday. But I also had a pit in my stomach, because this meant, we're cracking the seal. And I have moments like that. And I remember one time my dad hit his thumb with a hammer or something very cartoonish. And he said, "God bless it." And I thought I was
God bless
sick.
It.
Yeah.
Angry.
Yeah. God bless it. And I was sick. Sick.
Because Mormons what?
Mormons don't take the name of the Lord in vain. And that was akin to me of seeing my dad hanging up the phone with another woman. I mean, that's the level of emotional reaction I had to any aberration in the script. And we did early morning scripture study as a family. And when they came out on cassette tape, my mom would press play on the cassette tape and she'd be dry heaving because she was pregnant, but had a hot breakfast and we'd have to follow along on our Books of Mormon as it went around the room. And, it was 6 a.m. and I hated it, but I loved it because
makes you feel cool, strong and valued,
and
right?
Safe, and structured. And I loved it. And I felt like they were doing everything right. And, I just felt special and lucky, I guess would probably be the term. And then the oil and gas market kind of crashed. And my dad had developed other businesses, franchises, and he had the opportunity to extend those franchises in Utah. And I knew I'd always spent summers with my cousins. I had seen all of my relatives were in Utah still. And so when I was 15, my family moved from Denver to Salt Lake City. And I had attended Academy for Girls at BYU in the summer. And I had met a couple girls well, I'd met one specific girl that lived on Walker Lane. And I remember Walker Lane because my parents, when we sat at like the banquet at the end of like the camp, they sat, we sat together because we were friends. And my parents met her parents, and they said, oh, where do you live in Utah? And they said, Walker Lane. And my parents immediately recognized it and knew what it was. So I was like, oh,
This
Walker
must be
Lane.
cool.
Yeah. And we ended up moving into that same junior high boundary. And my first day of school, I came back and I was just being like led through the school, by a guide, as another student guide that was clearly not going to be my friend, but I was going to have this happen. And then my friend Amy from Academy for Girls in AFY came running out and was like, Heather. And we had this like reunion, and she was, one of like the 5 families, she was in that circle of elite Mormon wealthy families. And she had me locker with her. She had me forget everything that the student guide had taught me. And I was immediately kind of, what would be like embraced by this group of really elite Mormon women. And I remember later, my dad told me that he had a conversation. He had friends and connections here. He had gone to high school at Highland in Salt Lake. So he had contacted some of his friends when he was franchising the business to find out who he should employ. And, it was always like, who knows who. And I remember him asking his friend who didn't have a daughter my age, like, who should Heather be friends with? And he said, well, if she's friends with Margaret, you're golden. If she's friends with Kristen, you got to worry. And I was friends with both of them because they were both in the same group. And this was my first introduction to kind of wolves in sheep's clothing. I did not know Mormons that didn't live it. I didn't know them. I didn't know they existed. I didn't know that.
And when you say didn't live it, tell the audience what you mean by
Mormons that smoked and drank when they weren't at church, Mormons that
drank coffee
and just didn't tell anybody, Mormons that didn't attend the temple or didn't care to attend the temple, Mormons that lived in the gray. My dad was the head of security when the Denver temple was dedicated, and it was this big thing that he would drive the prophet, and we all got to be in the celestial room for the dedication of that temple. And that was, we were cool Mormons, and my dad was cool and funny and, awesome. And they lived it. As much as I know, they lived it. And so coming to Utah was my first kind of foray into people that did for the culture, but didn't live it because they believed it. And that was both thrilling for me as a teenager and also, terrifying, because what's real, And I had a proclivity to all of the things not Mormon. So it was scary to me that I could walk that line and still show up with these esteemed Mormons on Sunday and nobody was the wiser,
Mm-hmm. These are called Utah Mormons. Utah Mormons are Mormons that maybe are in it for the culture, but not really in it. And oftentimes, this is going to sound weird, but the most devout Mormons are the ones who are living in the mission field. And I got to say, it's so bizarre that Utah is Utah and the rest of the world is the mission field. So when we say the mission field, we mean everywhere in the world but Utah. But sometimes the Mormons outside of Utah are just way more into it than the ones here. And that makes sense, right? It's just, it's so pervasive. It's like swimming in the water, right?
Yeah. I'd be like, well, wait a second. I thought they were Mormon. They're like, well, they are. Well, what do you mean he went up her shirt? You know what I mean? Like things like that. He went up her shirt.
Right.
Like, what do you mean they were drinking? In 8th grade, I had a friend ask me to smuggle a beer on our Washington, D.C. trip. And I was so naive. I opened the beer and I took a shampoo bottle, poured it out. I mean, I was a cool friend, I was like, well, I'm not going to partake, but I opened a beer and I poured it into a shampoo bottle, screwed the lid back on and took it in my suitcase for a 4-day trip. Oh. And there was like, who wants a beer? And, unscrewed, it's like, I just had no concept of anything. That was my story. So I came to Utah when I was 15.
And so when we talk about Walker Lane, I just have to say Mormon Story Studios is in Holiday, Utah. I live in Holiday, Utah. It's kind of like East Bench, southeast of Salt Lake City, but maybe 10 minutes away, 10, 15 minutes away from Salt Lake City, kind of more up against the mountains. And this is kind of like one of the really elite areas of Mormonism. In Holiday, I understand it that some of the Mitt Romney lives here now. So like Mitt Romney could have lived anywhere in Utah. When he moves to Utah, he moves to Holiday, right? Some of the stakes in Holiday are the most wealthy stakes in the entire church.
Yeah.
So
I
a
believe
lot
it.
of old money, a lot of really super nice homes, and Walker Lane is this lane where you follow it. There's also a Wander Lane too, but I mean,
Yeah.
just gorgeous homes, old money,
Yeah.
you know.
Like this, the cheapest home on Walker Lane, even if it was just a lot, would be over, millions of dollars.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, big money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So, do I get the sense then that you, as a teenager, struggled with the rules, or kind of played with the rules and the boundaries?
Yeah,
You were
or
more
not?
wild than I was,
absolutely.
for sure.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
Talk
Well,
about
I
that.
was just, I was a wild child.
What were the rules?
Well, the rules were you didn't drink, you didn't smoke, you didn't swear, you didn't kiss boys, you didn't date boys, really. You weren't immoral. You
Immoral meaning?
like, anything below the Mason-Dixon line, John.
Which is why, for me, it's below the neck.
Yeah, you wouldn't let
Anything.
anybody touch your body. You wouldn't ever feel the stirrings of sexual desire. You kissed, but like you kept it clean. And you just kind of followed the Norman Rockwell courting rules. Like he picks you up, he brings a corsage, you go on a date, he opens the door, he brings you home, and like I was kind of thrust in this world where that wasn't happening for me, at least. And I just wanted.
Which high school?
I went to Olympus,
Okay.
Olympus Junior, and then Olympus High. And I just wanted to kind of experience anything and everything. But I still knew that, like, no matter what I did, I had to come home and be Mormon.
So was it duplicitous? Were you doing things in secret and just not telling
Yeah,
your parents?
absolutely duplicitous.
What were the things you were doing, if you want to share?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was like, I would go to a party where there's jungle juice in an igloo, and I would drink
What's
it.
that? I don't
Like
even
jungle
know.
juice is like fruit punch, and I don't know, like 10 times
Everclear?
and Everclear, like whatever kinds of alcohol they could find, because we,
And these were Mormons hosting the
yeah,
party.
absolutely. And that's why I think I was like even able to, because I was with my Mormon friends, and this was a little bit of a different context for my parents. Here I was, friends with the right friends, with the right girls, with the right people, and I don't think they even wanted to like look under the covers,
No, I just have to say, when your parents and you live outside of Utah and you decide to move to Utah, unless you know better, you're thinking, man, we've got a great out in the mission field, but when we move to Utah, it's going to be like the best Mormons, and our kids will be the most righteous and the most faithful. And I guess your parents found that maybe it was the opposite.
It was the opposite. I never really ever had an open conversation with them about anything. Like I would never
They didn't want to know.
They didn't want to know, and I did not want to tell them. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm really struggling. Like these kids that you think are like, it's so great I'm friends with them because their dad's the stake president and he's an area authority, and they're wealthy and they're beautiful and they're all Mormon and they're all married, and none of them are from, heaven forbid, a broken home or any other faith. My friends were solid, wonderful Mormon families. And so it was kind of, at first it was an opportunity for me to like get away with things, under the blanket of like.
So jungle juice, what are the other things?
I mean, we used to go to Geppetto's up on Murray Holiday Road and buy cigarettes from the vending machine.
Ooh, you
and like,
smoke.
we didn't even know though.
You
I didn't ever,
smoke.
I smoked one time and it was a pack of Camel unfiltered. And I was sick in the gutter. Like I thought I was going to die. I thought I had overdosed because it was a cigarette.
Yeah.
And I was revoltingly sick. And that was like my only experience with that. And I just was experimenting with things because I was able to for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister never did.
Mm-hmm.
And I assumed that my brother never did either.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt tremendous guilt, but the only reason I did it is because I could do it and still be Mormon. I would not have done this and been like with the wrong crowd in Colorado.
Right.
and I probably would.
Meaning with Mormons.
Yeah,
If you
with
sin with
Mormons.
Mormons, it's
With
different.
Mormons, like
if you sin with non-Mormons, it's bad. But if you sin with
if you sin with Mormons, then we're all towing the line, is what I like to say. Like, I'm still showing up for class. I'm still showing up for, seminary. My family isn't having any public embarrassment or shame or humiliation
because the kids are in
because we're all in on it.
Yeah.
We're all secretive and we're all coming home, and my world didn't shatter. I really used to believe that if I took one sip of alcohol or I made out with a boy that hadn't taken me on 6 dates, like my parents would see it and feel it and know it. And I would be absolutely devastating them and bringing shame onto the family.
Right. What about in your prayers with Heavenly Father? Because if you're living a double life and your parents don't know, but you're having fun, you're still encouraged to pray and you're encouraged to repent. And, you're taught about the law of chastity, and which is don't have sex or anything like it. Word of wisdom, no alcohol, no drugs, no tobacco, no coffee, no tea. What about when you're praying Heavenly Father? He knows, right?
Right.
Did you do prayers like that? Or
yeah. Well, we had family prayer every single night and
Right.
every single morning. And my personal prayers were, I did all the things, like I did personal progress. I was writing in my journal. And when I look back at my journals, they were pretty much just the journals of a 14, 15-year-old girl. They weren't overly spiritual, but I remember the pivotal moment I had that was kind of, for me, I was attending this friend from Walker Lane. Her older sister, who was 19 at the time, got married, and I was attending her wedding reception. And I was kind of, in that in-between duplicitous phase of life. And, we thought we were rebels, but it was few and far between that
Right.
we ever got our hands on anything that was, worthwhile. But I was definitely towing the line, just like whatever it's called, walking the line. And I remember I went into they had that little chapel offside where they show the video with all the songs, and it was of her like being embraced and in front of the temple. And I sat in there alone. It was maybe, 3-4 minute video. And I thought, okay, this is what I want. And this is what I've always wanted, but I just thought I had to diminish myself to have the fun or to be part of the group or to have the boy like me. But what I really want is this. And meaning I want a celestial marriage. I want a temple marriage. I want to be a virgin on my wedding day. I want to have a man, put me on that little cement riser with the temple behind me.
A missionary.
Yeah. And I want a beautiful, eternal family founded on the principles that I was raised with. And that's all I want. And that is, and I want it honestly. And I made a huge shift it was it was somewhere, I'd have to look at when she got married, but it was around my junior year. And I ditched kind of all of my friends that were anything. And then the other friends that were like the good families, we kind of all started being good. And so my senior year, I feel like I was like a true Mormon.
Yeah.
And it was because I remember that moment. It was like I made the conscious choice to live worthy of what I was working for.
Yeah. Yeah. In Mormonism, it feels, it's either feels really good to be the pure one that doesn't ever mess up, or it feels really good to be kind of the repentant one, the prodigal child, the Alma the Younger, as we call it, the Saul on the road to Damascus, that has that kind of like reawakening, and then you commit yourself to righteousness. And
and I never repented. I never told anyone. I never told my bishop. I never told my parents.
Oh, okay.
I never did anything fundamental. I could never even say it out loud that I had done anything
the shame
wrong.
train, as
I avoided accountability, or it wasn't like I'm going to feel good again. It was just like I'm going to live the way I'm professing I live.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, this is great. So Dre, let's come back to you.
Okay.
How did you manage like the rules and the friends and the righteousness and even the spirituality part, in parallel to?
So it's so funny because we have so many parallels, but like that kind of streak of rebellion, I don't relate to at all. I was terrified of ever being that person. I never would have been. And So
You were the straight arrow.
I was straight arrow as they
Yeah.
come.
Yeah.
And I remember I even, after I graduated high school, I had a boyfriend and he was in my ward and he like touched my boob over my shirt and I broke up with him that night and said, "You don't honor your priesthood. I can never be with someone like
Yeah.
you." And that was, I mean, so that was, that was my reality. Like I didn't know anything about anything and I wasn't curious. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to follow the rules and be a good girl and have my temple marriage. I had to send a boyfriend off on a mission, my first boyfriend from Virginia, and he had stayed in Virginia, obviously, and I had moved. But that was my thing. I was like, he's going on his mission. I'm just going to be home. I'm going to, go to school and wait for him to get home and we're going to get married. And that's going to be my life. I didn't want anything else. I didn't want to experiment with anything. I just wanted to be the best Mormon.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask Heather also after we're done with this little segment. But what about dreams for yourself regarding education or career? Because we know the family dream of being like the housewife, right? The mom, lots of big families, celestial marriage. What about education, your talents, and your dreams, and a potential career?
So, I mean, that's what's actually probably the most devastating thing about this story is I really didn't have any. I think I always knew I was smart. I was the smartest kid in my family and I always got good grades and I was talented. And I was always told that by teachers. I was in, the gifted and talented program at school. I always excelled. But it was never what was first. And it was never really even part of what I wanted to do. And it's funny because I mean, I've always been an entrepreneur. I had my first business when I was 19, when I had sent my missionary off. And
what was that?
A girlfriend and I had a vintage clothing store in Provo on Center Street. And my dad was teaching at BYU at the time. He was teaching entrepreneurship. And I talked him into letting me do this business if he would give me the money. I think it was like $2,000. If he would give me the money, yeah. And I promised that I would take his class at BYU. And that was kind of our deal. And it's so funny because I never took it seriously. Here I was 19. Like I think of now, like my daughter's 17. If she came to me and wanted to do a business, I would be like, what? This is amazing. Like, absolutely. And for me, it was like, oh, this is just a fun hobby. Like, this is what I'm going to do while my missionary is in Canada. And so it was just a fun thing that I did. It was never something that I considered like that I would long-term ever be an entrepreneur. The end goal was to be a mom and to be a wife and
stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. And I think back on, what kind of school I probably could have gone to. And I never considered it. It was, of course I wanted to go to school, but it was like, I'm going to go to school until John gets home. And that was just my plan, and there are a lot of things I look back on and think, and even when I first got married, to my first boyfriend, we lived on the East Coast. We lived in DC and he had, an opportunity to have an internship for the Department of Treasury. His dad was high up in the government and got him that internship. He also got me an internship at my dream job, the Smithsonian. And that was I was obsessed with ancient culture and museums. And if I ever were going to, heaven forbid, have a job or a career, that's what I wanted to do. And we figured it out with the finances. His was an unpaid internship. And so was mine. And one of us had to let it go. And so who do you think let it go?
Oh, you're going to break my heart.
I let it go.
Oh,
I know. And I became
the Smithsonian.
I know, Smithsonian. The kicker is that he went to the internship for 2 weeks and decided it wasn't for him, but he couldn't tell me. And so then he didn't ever continue his internship. And he actually, we got in big trouble for this, but he would actually walk with me to the metro station. I would go to my secretary job. I was doing front desk at somebody that, had hooked me up with a job in the ward. And he would pretend to take the metro into DC to the Treasury, but he had given up the internship and instead would go home and meet the missionaries in our ward, and they would play video games. And I didn't even know. And once our bishop found out about it,
Because he was afraid to tell you?
he was
That he
afraid to
lost
tell
his
me.
internship.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like the kicker is once we got called into the bishop's office, it was so embarrassing and just horrifying. You know, you can't be having the missionaries over to play video games. And I was like, how do you have time to do that? I thought you're at your internship. And no, turns out it just wasn't a good fit.
Oh,
I didn't like it.
man.
And I'm like, okay, well, I could have been doing the job of my dreams. But you know what? I don't even think I really had that much resentment. I think I just accepted it and was like, well,
That's not your role.
it's
And
not
you're
my
a dutiful
role.
wife. you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do. Those are like, Heather and I talk a lot on our podcast about sliding door moments. And it's like those, if you made the train or not, how would your life be different? Or
Right.
if you did this or
Meryl
not, how would
Streep.
that be different? Yeah.
Yeah.
And like for us, that's like absolutely one of my sliding door moments. Had I just dug in and said, no, my career is important too. And what I want to do with my education is important too.
But that wasn't even a thought.
No, it's not
It
the
wasn't
Mormon
even
way.
a discussion.
Yeah.
It was, that's not the priority. What I do with my education was absolutely not the priority, even though in hindsight, I was much better equipped to get my education and to do that internship
Yeah.
and all of those things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are certain ways where I think it's fair to say Mormonism has gotten better with time. But my mom, my grandma, my sisters, I'm older and they were older than me. They were all taught your job, 1 or 2 years of college is the most, but your job is to get married as soon as possible and start having babies. And a 4 years degree is kind of a waste. Now, that's my sisters and my mom and my grandma. You guys are younger than me, and that's still going on today. Like, not always, but a lot of our culture is still that way, and that's just kind of mind blowing that that's not a thing of the 50s or the 60s, but that's like the 2000s and
Mhm.
2010s and even now 2020s.
I think
Yeah.
now we're just cagier about how we cloak the messages we give our daughters, because I'm the only girl or the only daughter in my family to have graduated from college. And
Okay, so tell your story that way about
Okay, well-
dreams for yourself. We'll go back and forth. So dreams for yourself. Oh, did you want to finish something,
Oh,
Dre?
can I go to the bathroom?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm so
Go ahead,
sorry.
but we're gonna keep going.
Okay, I'll
No, just
tell
go-
my
just
version
go
while
ahead.
you go.
Yeah, you go ahead and go.
Nice,
And,
Dre.
So sorry.
no, it's good. It's good.
I've had 3 children.
It's to the left.
So kind of similar to Dre, I was I knew I was smart. I knew I was good at school. I tested really well. I had, average grades because it was not that big of a deal. And then but I was also really good at playing the piano. And so I got a piano
You haven't
scholarship.
played on the show yet, have you? Have you
I
played?
played in like a home tour.
Okay.
Just like a little ditty, but
Okay.
I've lost a lot of it because
Right.
you lose most of
Yeah.
your gifts
Yeah.
when you dedicate everything to a family. But
Yeah.
I got a scholarship to the University of Utah. Because I auditioned, I had a piano teacher who was on faculty at the University of Utah. So it made sense for me to audition for their piano department. But I also kind of auditioned with BYU too. And the University of Utah gave me a big scholarship.
Nice.
And
Those are competitive.
yeah, it was exciting and thrilling. And then BYU gave me like a talent award, which was, a nominal amount, a couple $100 every semester, but you had to take 8 hours of music credits and do all these things. And I assumed my parents would want me to go where I got the scholarship. I just assumed that. It was just like, it's money, it's honorable, it's status. And they were pretty adamant that I did not attend the University of Utah. And this is like the biggest sliding door moment for me.
Talk about that rivalry and what that means.
They would say, well, they both went to Utah State and the University of Utah. So neither of them attended BYU, but I lived in Holiday. And if I was going to be a piano major at the University of Utah, it made more sense for me to live at home where I had a piano, where I had access to practice, where I could commute to class, rather than renting a piano practice room and living on campus and having kind of that collegiate experience. And so my parents approached me and basically said, we'll give you the money of your scholarship. We'll pay for everything like you had the scholarship if you choose to go to BYU. Because what they said was, because, you know, my parents are very cool people. They had friends of all faiths. You know, they were missionaries. They were, you know, setting up people with all the social services. They were cool. And I almost feel like now looking back, like they just didn't want to say the backward dumbass thing, you know? So they said, we want you to have that experience of living away, not living at home.
Nice.
And not, you know, we want you to have the experience of going away to school, and we want you to go to BYU.
So I thought what you were going to say is that because BYU is the Lord's university, because in my Mormon world growing up, like the University of Utah was viewed as rebellious. Utah State, and I've got 9 years of grad school at Utah State. I love the Aggies, but there was this perception that Utah State was kind of the farmer school
Or the partier school,
party
like
school.
the bad
Party
Mormons.
school, totally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that BYU was where the righteous, faithful Mormons go. It was called the Lord's University.
It is the Lord's University.
Yeah.
It's,
So,
you
but
know,
that wasn't why your parents wanted you to go.
well, that's what they said to me.
Okay.
But I knew we were BYU fans. I mean, even though I never even made the connection that they hadn't attended BYU, because we were devout BYU fans. I remember one year, 6th grade, Mrs. Udovitz's class for Halloween, I went as a BYU fan, and I was so
for Halloween,
so insulated and so naive to what that represented to the world. I thought BYU was like Auburn or Michigan or Ohio State.
Stanford.
And I wrote BYU with a Sharpie on these white shoes. I wore my dad's BYU jacket. I wore a BYU hat. I didn't realize, and I kind of cringe now thinking back, like I walked through that parade, like just blatant Mormonism.
Billboard style.
Billboard style. And with zero shame, zero even awareness of what BYU was. And so
when I went to BYU, we like to think of it as the Harvard of the West. But I think only BYU thinks of it that way.
Yeah. And I think there was some status there for my
Stanford
family.
Or Berkeley.
Yeah.
Right?
You would think.
Or 10 other schools.
Not BYU.
BYU is a good school though. Academically, it's a very good school.
Yeah. BYU wasn't great for me.
Oh, okay. All right.
I mean, I studied.
Why not?
Well, I chose, my major was humanities because I knew I had a teacher in 5th grade say, you should be an attorney. You are quick and you're a great debater. That's 5th grade, Mr. Johnson. No, it was Mr. Poole. Thank you, Mr. Poole. Cut off his 4th finger in a lawnmower too. But Mr. Poole and that had stuck with me because now that I look back with an adult perspective and hindsight, you know, no one ever mentioned a career to me.
Yeah, it's not something that we are taught.
No one had ever said, you would be a great lawyer. No one said.
Are you getting emotional about that?
Yeah.
Why?
Because why did I always think I should be a lawyer? Why did I've told you, like, I should have been a lawyer? Because Mr. freaking Poole said that to me when I did a mock debate, you know, and I was 10.
Why are we not saying those things to our daughters all the time?
Why is that the only time I remember someone saying you'd be a great lawyer? So I studied humanities because I would tell people, because it would be a great launch into, you know, law school. I studied humanities because I thought it'd make me a cooler mom, more evolved, art, music, language. My sister got married, you know, a semester to BYU. She was engaged, maybe, you know, never went
18
back.
years old, like 19 years
Yeah,
old.
she's married at 19. I knew that, and I knew how happy that made my parents. There was not a moment where they're like, she's so young, she needs to finish her degree. She found a guy, he seems to like you. He's a righteous Mormon, huge wedding, you know.
Yours?
No, my
Your
sister.
Okay,
This is my sister. I was a sophomore.
Okay, no, keep going.
So, you know, I just knew that, like, you go to BYU because that's the greatest dating pool on the planet.
Get your MRS.
To get your MRS, to meet a man and to get married. And as much as we never said it out loud, I mean, I knew it. We all knew it.
Yeah.
And if I didn't know it before I went to BYU, I knew it 2 weeks in, that my role there was not to, like, you know, prepare to, like, go enter to learn and go forth and serve. Like, it was like, get married.
Enter to learn, go forth to have babies.
Yeah. And start your life.
Yeah.
I wasn't starting my life as a college student. I was basically putting myself in a target rich environment to get married and to progress as a woman and as a member of the church. And the only way to do that under the guise of Mormonism is to get married.
Yeah.
and to have children.
Yeah.
And so I knew that, and that was just kind of always hanging over me. And I didn't get asked out ever at BYU.
Were you in the dorms your freshman year?
I lived in Heritage Halls in Fugal Hall because
So you made your own food.
made my own food. And I thought it was like, I was so independent. And I kind of always wanted to be, you know, the BYU co-ed, but different, because I also didn't fit the norm. You know, I was loud. I was big. I was,
What do you mean big?
like, I'm just like big, you know, I'm not small and quiet and sweet.
Big
and
personality, you're saying?
well, and big bodied,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
like I'm not diminutive,
Yeah,
you know, in
yeah.
any way.
And the BYU guys wanted cute little short.
I had FP.
teeny
I had
girls.
what they call John FP,
Tell
which
us
is
what that
fat
means.
potential.
Yeah.
That's fat potential.
Which means what? Tell people what that means.
Like you could get really fat after you have a baby. You got big bones. You seem to,
You're not a 90 pounder.
You're not a 90 pounder. You know, and you seem to like yourself. You seem to laugh loud. You seem to, you know, be sarcastic.
Oh, what's that like to be in a culture that doesn't really...
You never date.
What?
I never got
What was
asked out at
that
BYU.
like?
I got asked out by one man who had stopped being homosexual and converted to the gospel and was now committed to being a righteous Mormon, but he had been gay for like 5 years. Wherever you're at, buddy, he's still happily married. Knock on.
To a woman?
Yeah, to a woman.
Wow.
And then I got asked out by another guy.
Are you saying all 4 years or just that freshman year?
No, all 4 years BYU.
All 4 years
I
you
dated
only went
one
out-
guy, and he was I met him on student council. I represented students at large on the BYUSA student council, and he represented students of other faiths. And it was Charles Mantione Jr., and he was a Catholic guy that loved to ski, and also was really impressed by the honor code because he was a man of honor.
Hmm.
And so he came to BYU, and I really liked him, and we dated a little bit, but of course I didn't really date him. He was Catholic. I mean, this was like not why I was sent to this university. This was not my plan. So I got a job. Like I worked 40 hours a week, managing a tanning salon, and I also started a business. And I was
At
entrepreneur.
BYU?
Yeah, at BYU.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was called Steelhead Designs, and it was a little earring business, but I got a couple of big contracts with Nordstrom and Sundance. And
cool.
I had some older students who had been entrepreneurial and kind of invested in me and helped me. Charlie Friedman that started Down East Outfitters. He was a huge inspiration to me. And it was just a barbecue where he said, Heather, if you want to, I'm like, Charlie, let me sell these at your store. Cause he had started Down East Outfitters. And he was like, yeah, if you want to sell these at your store, you have to make them for $3. I'll buy them for $6. We sell them for $12. And like, that's all he said to me. And I was like, I'll figure out a way to make them for $3, you know? And so I got a team and I started making jewelry, and I ended up winning BYU's Entrepreneur Student of the Year honorable mention.
Oh, wow.
I lost to Jonathan Kuhn that started 1-800-CONTACTS.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
I don't
forgot about
remember
that.
who, I kind of got third place. I don't remember who got second place, but that was a huge honor. And like, I don't think my parents even knew about it. And guess what? Nobody at school gave 2 shits about it. And if I tried to talk about it with like pride or thrill, like it'd have been like, okay.
They're like FP.
Have fun with your
you'll
earring
be
business.
selling doTERRA oils in about 5 years. Like if you've got it in you.
So what years were you there about?
I was there 92 through. Well, I mean, technically, I graduated in 96 because then I went on a mission. But
So we overlapped.
Really?
I was at BYU in 92 and 93. Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Yeah.
I lived in Heritage Halls, and then I lived in Chatham Town on like 9th East.
So you would have been there when the September 6th were excommunicated. Now you probably never heard of. You don't even know who I'm talking about. Does that ever ring a bell?
The only thing I remember being controversial was one of the female English professors.
Cecilia Farr.
Yeah.
Or Gail Houston, one of the two.
Mhm.
What about them?
Just that they were heretics and were preaching false doctrine.
One prayed to Mother in Heaven.
Is that what? I mean, I just remember they
Gail
were
Houston prayed to
heretics.
Gail Houston prayed to Mother in Heaven, and she got kicked out of BYU as a professor because she advocated praying to Mother in Heaven. Because Mormons believe that there's Mother God and Father God, and potentially Father God and many Mother Gods. But you pray to the dad, you pray to the guy.
Yeah.
But she was praying to the woman, and she got in trouble, kicked out of BYU. My wife took classes with Gail, but then Cecilia Farr, it was like pro-choice and like marching on the Capitol steps and abortion.
And
It should be a woman's right to choose. She was
kicked
booted
out
as
too.
well. So, okay, you remember some of that.
I mean, I remember it. Yeah. And I was just very much like committed to being like as what's the word? Like as desirable of a specimen for marriage as possible.
Mhm.
That was like what I was deeply committed to. And it wasn't happening for me at BYU. But
Wait, really quick. How did you deal with the depression and the sadness and the loneliness of feeling unwanted by everyone? Or not everyone?
I never
being dramatic,
acknowledged it
but
as that, we
you were
don't,
just like
no, it's
resilient?
just like I have to find my soulmate, and it's probably things I need to change about myself, or the fact that I drank sophomore year in high school.
You
Like
thought you were unworthy.
yeah,
that you
or
had sinned.
I just felt like but I mean, I could tell what time it was. You know what I mean? Like I knew that not I knew I didn't have a lot of play with this community in terms of like sexual prowess with the boys. I mean, I had traveled, I had been to other schools. I got asked out by a professional football player. I would walk through an airport and I knew men liked me. I didn't suffer from that, but
You weren't the type.
Mormon men
You weren't
didn't like me.
You weren't the type.
They just didn't, and I didn't blame them. So I didn't feel sadness or depression. I mean, I think
You're
I
just like,
felt
"Of course they don't
loneliness.
like me."
I had a lot of best guy friends, we traveled together and had the best times and were like very, very close. But then they always liked, the appropriate choice. And I understood that. I totally understood that. But I knew what I had to offer. And so I just was kind of, I guess, just assuming I was biding my time. I didn't have any career aspirations. I didn't have any, it was almost like, here I am, I'm graduating, I'm still not married. Holy shit, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so I went on a mission.
Yes, you did that. So tell our listeners, Mormon missions are different now, because now in 2020, both boys and girls are encouraged to go on missions, boys when they're 18, girls when they're 19. It was different back in our day, and not all women were encouraged to go on missions.
No.
And so talk about that.
So it was 1997, and I kind of with a friend, we just like looked at each other and we were like, I'll go if you go, because neither of us were married, and kind of at that crossroads, we didn't know what our graduation and our deadline was approaching, our expiration date was approaching, and we kind of made the choice. And I remember telling my parents, and this is when it's tricky, I think, as like a devout Mormon parent, and it's very different now than it was 20 years ago, to be clear. Only girls that couldn't get married or were weird went on missions. I mean, that's really,
And sometimes this is going to sound awful, but sometimes overweight.
yeah.
women-
Oh,
women
yeah.
would go on missions.
Yeah. Like, you were undesirable.
We're not married yet.
Not
We
married. Yeah. Like
graduated.
you would graduate from BYU and you weren't married, like go on a mission if you can pull it off. And like, I remember telling my parents and trying to spin it like, but we all knew, that like my sister got married by the time she was 19. Here I am, 21, unmarried, no prospects on the horizon, and I'm going to go on a mission. And I saw them be supportive, but also be like, oh, geez, Like I just
Like almost like we saw this coming, or
no, I think they just thought like she's going on that path,
Okay.
like the return missionary.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they were happy that I wasn't saying like, listen, I'm joining the circus, or I'm joining the cult, but I don't think they were truly thrilled. I think that they would have rather had me getting married to some sort of Mormon prince. And the reason I mention that now is because they might have a different explanation. My mom might say differently. And of course they would say differently if you're to ask them, because I knew at the end of the day that we towed the line.
Yeah.
We said what we needed to say to be appropriate, accommodating, socialized Mormons. But that's what we presented to the world. And I knew that the core values of my family and of my parents were marriage, temple marriage, no other option, and family.
Yeah.
And so I ended up serving a mission in France. And when I came home, I was going to go live in DC with some of my very well-established Mormon friends who were smart and had graduated from BYU, had made the decision to not go on a mission and were furthering their education and working in DC. I believe my friend was like, Margaret, wasn't she getting like her MBA and her master's, like that joint program at like, I mean, she's public policy and MBA at the same time, also going to Harvard for business school. And I was going to go live with her and be her roommate. And this was exciting to me because I knew of the East Coast Mormons. There were 2 wards you wanted to be in: the Colonial Ward,
Yeah, singles,
the Colonial
Singles.
Ward, or
Yeah.
the Huntington Beach Singles Ward. There were two magnets. You know? Those
East
two
side,
singles
west
were
side,
East Side,
right?
West
Yeah,
Side.
yeah.
And I told my dad, and my dad said, "I don't think that's the right choice for you." And they were adamantly opposed to it.
So you going to the East?
Yeah. And he said out loud, like, single career-minded women is not the path I see for you. And you need to focus on getting married, and probably cited a couple references or
Ezra Taft Benson.
yeah,
or
you know,
some
like this is where your
apostle.
goal is. And
No success can compensate. That's in the show.
yeah,
So you say that, right?
loosely paraphrase Harold B. Lee.
No success.
And
can
David O.
compensate
McKay
for-
said it too. It's kind of a combo of those two.
No success
things.
can compensate for failure in the home.
Yeah.
You got to.
And also, like, no success you have outside the home will ever equal what you do as a mother and a wife. And so my sister lived in California. I made the decision to go to the Huntington Beach ward because that was more palatable, because I went there with not with career-minded women, but with fun, sun-loving surf bunnies that were also, you know, I had a better chance of, you know, of getting married there.
Yeah. Oh no.
And you did. You made it happen.
And I did. And I met and married my ex-husband within, you know, I was there for a year. And then the day he moved into the ward,
you snatched him up.
Yeah. Well, he snatched me up because he was new to it. He was new to that mecca of like the men having like the pick of the litter, so to speak, you know,
so gross.
That heavy environment where they didn't even have to ask girls out because we were just pining for them and baking them things and dropping things off and showing our prowess in like decorating. And oh, they don't have a Christmas tree, let's do one for them, you know. Oh, it's Easter, let's make Easter baskets for all the boys in 4B. You know, we did it all. And he came in and like met me and kind of courted me, and we met and got married within 9 months. So that was like,
you found it, you did it, you nailed it.
I did it.
You nailed it.
And how grateful am I for that?
Do you use his first name or do you not use his first name?
Yeah, it's Billy.
Billy Gay. Billy Gay.
Billy Gay the third.
So Dre, swing the microphone around and show people your shirt.
Oh,
okay. So tell them what
you could do this, Dre. What you
tell them what your shirt says.
Honor code what?
Okay, and that's the tie to the show. Go ahead and pull it back. That's the tie to the show.
Yeah, and the honor code restricted you from having a boy in your apartment past 9 p.m. Any sort of immorality. Drinking, smoking, swearing, wearing clothes without sleeves, wearing skirts above your knee. Like the honor code was policed by other students. And you could be called in for an honor code violation if you failed to report a fellow student who was blatantly violating the honor code. So even if I'm living my best life and my roommate is boffing her boyfriend in the next room, I could lose my position at the university if I did not turn that person in. So honor code was like
life. It's what
and
you lived.
It was policed by the other students, and it was very much kind of like that mentality of just like better her than me, you know, like so that's why the shirt honor code what is so funny, because
I love it. Can people buy that?
Yeah, you can buy it.
Yeah. On our website, beautylabblazer.com. We sell them there. They're pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so one question I do have to ask about honor code what? Do you think did you ever lift up your shirt ever? And were you the type of student that would break the honor code as far as you remember?
As far as I remember, like at BYU, I would have broken the honor code with any guy that asked me to. No one was knocking on my door. No one wanted to peer under my shirt. Nobody would have looked had I flashed them. I was invisible at BYU.
So you weren't a party girl.
I was not a party girl.
Okay.
I would have longed to be any sort of girl at BYU. I was
invisible.
I was, you know, getting my degree and working at a tanning salon 40 hours a week. And I don't know how to explain it. I had zero play with the Mormon community of men. I would leave campus and like remember that I was even an attractive woman.
Okay.
Like I have that community, and I'm sure there were guys that liked me that never, you know, admitted it, but I was not dating.
Anything worth mentioning about your mission at all? You said you were a year and a half in France. Was it cool? Was it awesome? Should we just not even talk about it?
No, I loved my mission. I was a very, very good missionary. The APs had a sticker of my face and my companion's face on the back of their tags. We had the highest baptisms in the history of that mission. I think it's because only young single women or single mothers were interested in hearing the gospel. And so
In France.
in France. And but I had a couple pivotal moments in my mission where I realized I was asking these women who were kind of my same age to leave everything they'd ever known. And I saw the future of the church there, and there was no priesthood, there was no way to sustain it. And I had a couple big moments where I thought, this doesn't feel right, but it doesn't matter because I'm here to represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and to bring people to God, you know?
Yeah.
So I just suppressed a lot of it.
Suppressed feeling.
The feeling
like,
that the feeling of being pulled in two directions, like this might not be noble. And I have one pivotal story where this woman had, gone through all these things, and we tried to get her to quit smoking, quit drinking, quit having an affair with her boss. And she was doing all these things, and we thought she was our golden contact. And then she kind of dropped off of the discussions, and we ran into her on the plaza, and she was jubilant and glowing and so happy. And she was like, I took all the money that I was saving for tithing, I went shopping, and I've never felt more alive. And, I remember her walking off, and I looked at my companion, and I felt deep, deep despair. And I attributed it to her rejecting the gospel. But if I had been completely honest with myself, the despair I felt was because I wanted to go with her,
ooh, why?
because she was happier. And I loved her as a human being. I had more in common with her than with my companion. And I felt this despair because I could never do what she's doing, take the money I'd been saving for tithing, spend it, and feel the joy she felt. And I knew that because in the context of who I was and who I was raised to be, I could never be that carefree about leaving the church or defying the principles of the gospel. I was in it. So either I was going to be in it and sad, or I was going to have to be against it and sad, because it was always going to be in reference to who I was born to be and how I was living my life in that moment. And that brings it back to Dre, because that's why I feel like it's hard for me to reconcile, because you left so long ago that it's like, now you are who you are. But I feel like I'm always going to be either the person that's on this side of the fence, on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. And it never leaves the reference of who I am. You know what I mean? My Mormonism is so fundamental to my identity that even if I were to not be Mormon, I'm now not Mormon. I'm not just myself.
Totally.
Okay. So Dre, we're coming to you right now.
Okay.
But before we do, I'm going to ask you to do one thing, Heather,
Yes.
that I ask people who serve missions in foreign countries. Are you willing to bear your testimony in French, or, give the audience a sense for how you would have borne your testimony in French?
I would say, bonjour, je suis Sardines, je suis une missionnaire de l'Église de Jésus-Christ des Saints des Derniers Jours. J'ai aucun message pour vous et votre famille. And I would say, I could do the first vision. J'ai vu au-dessus de ma tête une colonne de lumière qui brille au-dessus de la soleil et qui descend peu à peu jusqu'à tomber sur moi. Et I'm going to paraphrase, but deux hommes et l'un de monte à l'autre et disent, voici, est mon fils bien-aimé, écoute-le.
And tell everyone what you just said.
I just said, hello, I'm a missionary with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I'm here with a message of joy for you and your family. And then I would, we would tell the story of the first vision. I saw above my head a column of light that was more brilliant than the sun, that descended just a little until it fell over me. And there were two figures, two men, and one demonstrated the other and said, here is my son, listen to him, hear him. Behold my beloved son, hear him.
And tell us why you're getting emotional about that.
Well, I don't know, John, actually.
It's just tender, Heath.
I don't
It's
know.
tender.
Because I'm just sad that my life is not my own and never was and never probably will be.
It will be.
And I feel shame. I feel shame that I sent that message over and over and over, and then I'm not living it. You know, I feel shame and regret. But I feel sad that I couldn't be in France with those people and love them as they were and embrace the things I loved about their culture. And instead I was superior, and I was dogmatic, and I was absolutely committed to no other option than this is the truth, and your life will be better and you'll be happier if you live it. And that has not been proven to be true for me. But I taught it to other people who were just minding their own business, living their best life. And I came in and promised them heaven and earth,
And what hasn't been true for you?
just that the plan of happiness hasn't really worked out for me, I guess you could say.
I think we're promised that if we just follow the gospel, we'll be happy.
I think that that's the most sinister part of my faith, is even reading the family proclamation. It doesn't only say this is like the doctrine of God. It says these are the principles for which happiness on earth will be best achieved.
You got it memorized.
Yeah, of course. And Jesus the Christ, all the things. And that happiness is the sinister word, like Adam felt that men are that they might have joy. And I think there's a lot of people out there living the principles, but not feeling joy. And we don't recognize that, we instead turn inward and say, well, we aren't doing enough, or we aren't committed enough, or we aren't living it enough. And I think that's probably why I get emotional. I don't know. It's just weird to say it, to remember who I was. I felt powerful as a missionary. I think I'm a good saleswoman. I think I am good at marketing. I think I'm all the gifts that I now recognize as gifts that were never recognized before, I think made me a great member of the church, made me a great missionary, made me a great Relief Society president, made me a great young women's leader. And I'm sad that those were the only ways that anything I was born with was put to use, because now I can't embrace that, I can't have that be a part of my narrative because there's so much shame because I'm not continuing it. So it's like I'm eradicated. And when I finally came into my own, it's still invalid because, I didn't persevere. I didn't press forward with steadfastness and, I didn't make it till the end. And here I am sitting on the couch in Mormon Stories, which I used to think was like the devil.
What?
I just was like, oh, nope, not the Mormon Stories. Don't approach me with that, Dre. I'm not that far gone. Yeah, so that's probably get emotional. I digress.
That's beautiful. Heather, that was beautiful. And I really appreciate you going deep. I'm going to just say, and this is probably stereotypical and rude, but you watch Real Housewives and you almost think these aren't real people. I don't know if you understand that someone who's new to viewing this, sometimes it can feel, it's fun and it's exciting and it's dramatic and it's emotional,
but it's entertainment. Yeah.
And you sometimes go I wonder what these people are really like behind the camera. And I know that there's these people are wise and profound and smart, or at least you are, right? And I'm sure they are too. But I love that we're able to kind of go deep. It's so beautiful and powerful. So I have to ask you one question. So you bore your testimony. You talked about the church. You talked about Joseph Smith. So talk really quickly about the beliefs, the Mormon beliefs that were most important to you, because you don't really get to dig into that, or at least that we haven't seen so far on the show.
Yeah. And I would never, it would almost be blasphemous. It's such a nuanced thing, like,
Yeah.
the intricacies of our faith, and especially Mormonism, where you could take something for shock factor and have it just be, exploited completely. And that's not the purpose of the show, is to not teach people about Mormonism.
Right.
It's just that I can't really display my life unless I talk about it, because that's why I'm so messed up, folks.
Or wonderful,
or whatever.
glorious.
But it's like, and I,
so the question is the parts of your testimony that were most important to you as a missionary and after.
Listen, I am a TBM. I am a true believing Mormon. I understood that, like, tithing's a principle of faith, that, I have no problem suspending disbelief for Urim and Thummim and the way that the plates were no longer here. That's what God was going for. Like, I think that religion, for me, every part of my testimony was important. Like, there wasn't anything.
Tell us the 5 or 7 or 8 things that were like the most.
Okay, the Book of Mormon.
What about it?
The Book of Mormon. I thought, and I'm scared to say this in front of Dre and you, but like, was the most correct book written on the face of the earth, and that a man would do more by abiding by its principles than any other book. And I've read the Book of Mormon a lot of times, and it always, it's weird and it's convoluted and it's, made up names, but there are nuggets of wisdom and truth that have continually showed up in my life, and I'll say things and think that's a scripture, or like, here's something that like, on a TED talk, and I'll be like, well, yeah, that's Alma 29, like, or that's Moroni's promise, and I have a testimony of, and I hate to say the veracity of the Book of Mormon, but that the Book of Mormon is a wonderful book. And for the first time, I'm starting to say, like, well, you know what? Untamed by Glennon Doyle is also a wonderful book that informs my life, and so is A Tale of Two Cities, and so is Heart of Darkness.
Well, you just dropped Charles Dickens and Joseph Conrad on Mormon Stories.
All of those, and I used to, I don't like to even say in past tense because I'm still walking through all of it, but I don't know how to disentangle myself from the principles that have enriched my life and that have informed my life. So like, I think differently about artists and women's roles because I put them all in context of like the gospel plan. You know what I mean? And I still can't extrapolate from my own identity the shame I feel that I'm not a full-time mom, that I'm not the mother that my mother was to me in many ways, and that I am letting down generations of people that sacrificed everything so that I could be privileged enough to sit here and like say, I don't know if it's true,
Sure.
So I believe everything about it, and I believe nothing about it.
You're right in the thick of it. So really quickly, we'll do like a firing round where I'm just going to list some Mormon doctrines and you just say what it means to you. So Heavenly Father, what is Heavenly Father? And this is before your faith crisis. So like,
okay.
Heavenly
So
Father.
as a TBM,
Heavenly Father means what?
An all-knowing, all-loving, omniscient, omnipotent God that knows me individually and loves me eternally.
Jesus Christ.
His son, born of a divine father, a mortal mother, the only way, an advocate for us before the Father, the only one capable of redeeming us and bridging the gap between mortal life and eternal glory.
Holy Ghost.
Holy Ghost is an integral part of the Godhead, but does not have a body, for if he did, he could not inhabit ours, and is the light of Christ within us that helps direct us, is the Jiminy, I used to picture him as Jiminy Cricket, a wonderful angel man that would guide me away from anything that would hurt me or cause enmity between me and God.
The Bible.
A wonderful work of prophets that has been, misinterpreted by, and now contains like archaic cultural code because it was, but if divinely translated and it's the King James version, I think it is, contains true principles, but I cannot read a Bible not in the King James version.
Right.
That iambic, that pentameter is the only way it even, resonates with me.
Joseph Smith,
a brilliant, prophet of God that received revelation and light and brought forth the fastest growing religion on the face of the planet.
and what was his character like?
I think that God can do amazing things through extremely flawed human beings. I know because I am an extremely flawed human being and I have done great things in the name of God, So I think he was probably all the things that people say he was. Probably a pedophile, probably a womanizer, but also probably a great friend, fun guy, charming and hopeful and burdened, with the vicissitudes of life and being the founder of a religion. I don't know.
Okay, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is pre-faith crisis.
The truest church on the face of the planet and the only church that contains the restored priesthood and direct lineage back to Jesus Christ and to Peter. And I just believe that like the church is heavily flawed because we are humans running it, but we're doing the best we can and our heart's in the right place and God's going to figure it all out in the end. And even though we keep gays out of heaven, we still love them on earth. And even though we, changed our mind about Black people in 1978, we at least changed our mind and we're making up for it now, and we're doing the best we can but we are, we're the only true church on the face of the earth.
Only true church, yeah. Priesthood.
The priesthood is a real, tangible, the power of God restored by Joseph Smith through Peter, James, and John, and that it is, that every male that has been endowed with the priesthood can trace his priesthood lineage back to Jesus Christ. And that the laying on of hands is a real, tangible way to transfer priesthood power.
What about the maleness of the priesthood? How did you think about that?
God had to balance things out, and as females, we are divine, we create life, and they organize and have to have their own thing so they don't feel bad about themselves. That's like literally what we say.
Priest is like the
concession prize.
The concession prize.
Yeah, because we are the mother of all that's all living, and truly, if you temple doctrine, our children are sealed to us, and so we had to have a way to make that link back to a man, and so myself and my posterity, it's like my womb is blessed, and so I need a reason to need you. And so it made sense to me in a perfect full circle way.
Families
are eternal, and what's sealed on earth is sealed in heaven. Why are you guys doing this to me? It's so stupid. And, a family is the greatest way to have happiness on earth and eternal glory. And families can be together forever through Heavenly Father's plan. And no empty chairs,
meaning
we've all got to get back there together, and it doesn't mean anything if one of us doesn't get back there.
Like where?
To heaven.
What part?
The celestial kingdom.
Which
eternal progression, exaltation. It is.
What's the difference between celestial kingdom and other places in heaven?
Well, I've heard that if you saw the telestial, you'd kill yourself just to get there because it's nice too. But the only way to progress eternally and to have sex eternally and to be loved eternally and
to become a god, right?
And to become a god and to, progress eternally. Because wouldn't it be terrible if you were just not able to progress? And I'm like, I haven't progressed in like 15 years and it has been pretty terrible. But, is, through saving ordinances and the sealing powers of the temple. And I thought it was all weird, but I also surrendered, was able to suspend my disbelief because the promises were so great.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for being willing to do that. I wasn't trying to be mean or cruel, but that's beautiful. And it's something nobody gets to see in the show, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. You feeling okay? Do you have any reflections after sharing that?
No, it's just that, I was, when I was thinking about coming on here, I had like kind of steeled myself up, like, why don't I believe? But it's so much easier to say like why I do believe than it is to justify why I don't believe. So I appreciate you like drawing a line in the sand. Like before, I was burdened with this awareness and burdened with actually lack of options. Because if my family hadn't imploded and I was still sealed to my, still in a nuclear family, I guess, because I'm still sealed to my husband, but, everything changed in context of that. But like before my faith crisis, this is how I believed and how I conducted myself. And I don't necessarily feel that way right now. And even if I did feel that way, which obviously I still do, there are too many horrible atrocities being committed in the name of righteousness and the church to the people I love and to the people that I actually want to be in heaven with. Like when I think about being in heaven forever, like, first of all, my OD friend right here, like, I don't want to go if she's not there. And my gay best friends and my friend's transgender child,
How about me?
and you, yeah, you're an OD too. Like the people that I want to be with forever are not, Sister Marshall that's never missed visiting teaching a day in her life. And I just got my Snickers bar taped to my door because God damn it, she's not going to miss a month. I don't care if she's on television and won't answer the door. That's not who I want to be with forever. But I'm pretty sure she'll be there,
Yeah.
because she's crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's and she's never wavered and I'm wavering. And so maybe it's like, I don't want to be a part of any club that wants me as a member.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just working through all of that right now.
So beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Dre, it's coming back to you now.
I mean, I don't know how I can follow that.
No, well, I'll get you. I'll get you too.
So amazing. No, but I like remember feeling the same way. And like, you will find an identity outside of all of this. It's
This takes
taken me
time.
a long time, but you'll get there.
And it just feels like your identity is either pro or anti,
Nope.
it's never it's never outside of the scope of Mormonism.
But that's what I mean, and not to like, sidetrack a little bit, but that's what we were talking about in the car. And that's why I love what John's doing is like, I feel like when I did leave the church, I was totally anti and like wanted to be a missionary for people to leave the church. And because I was so angry. And John's podcast and like a lot of the things that he has done for many, many years, I feel like has helped create that gray area of like, we don't have to hate the church and we can also not believe in the church. And it's okay to still love the church, love the principles, be grateful for Sister Marshall who taped,
it was
Snickers
actually
bars on
3
you.
Andes mints. It wasn't a Snickers bar.
Okay, well, I mean, less
Glad you
credit to
cleared
you,
that
Sister
up.
Marshall. But I think a lot of times when we leave the church, at least for me, I kind of threw it all out and was like, well, screw those guys. They tricked me. I'm pissed. And a lot of what John's doing has allowed me to remain in gratitude for the things that I was taught that way. And there is a middle ground. I know it seems like there's not because it's so
There is.
polarized right now, especially with everything that's happening with stupid fair Mormon and like people being crazy. It seems like the divide is ever growing, but like that's all the more reason to really dive in and say the things that you're saying of like, I believe it all and I don't believe it all. There's so many people
Yes.
that feel the same way, I
Yeah.
think.
A lot of active Mormons, you know how like it's so Mormon to like have the elephants in the room where people just don't talk about anything important. There are so many active devout Mormons that don't believe some or all of the church, that are in the pews every Sunday when it's not COVID, because they just stay quiet because they're terrified to ever talk up. And so, yes, there's all sorts of ways to be a Mormon. And there are people, and the other thing that we forget is in other religions, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Episcopalians, Catholics, you go when you want, you don't go when you don't want. You believe the things you want to believe, you don't believe the things you don't want to believe. It's like a cafeteria approach. And that's actually okay. And they're just glad when you show up. Like, that's religion in almost every other American religion, not Scientologists, not Jehovah's Witnesses, not Mormons, maybe not Orthodox Jews. But besides that, that's how most Americans do religion. We're just new. We're just young. And so we haven't figured it out yet. But we are totally, as a church, more and more moving to the place where you can just be whatever type of Mormon you want, and they're just going to be glad to have you. Because frankly, they're losing so many people, right? So if you want to be Mormon, if you want to stay Mormon, you could totally do that. But that's a journey you're going to have to go on.
I think that would be difficult. At least that would be difficult for me because of the types of Mormons we were or are. That would be tough to be that 2.0 of the cafeteria style. I don't know, Heather, you're an all-in person and I'm the same way. Like,
And I don't believe that the family proclamation is true or real. And I don't believe, I mean, a lot of what I said, I believed, I believed all of it and I believe none of it too.
Yeah.
So I'm still.
You're in the journey. You're in the thick of it.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
she's in the thick of it.
Good work.
Thank you.
It's called maturity. It's called progress. Like, you're growing now. You weren't growing for
years.
You were growing for a few years. You're growing now. And
Yeah.
guess what? Growth is pain.
It is painful.
It's painful.
And it's so interesting just in terms of the television show, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Like, the one thing that kept me from deciding to do it was not, will this affect my children? Will this, embarrass my family? It was, will I get a letter from the church saying you are excommunicated and we have removed your name? And like, I just remember sitting there on the plane coming back from like one of the final things thinking, this is a moment. And like, what is more important to me? And because, and I made the choice, I said, I'm willing to risk it, but I did it hoping that I would never get the letter. Let's just be fair.
Yeah.
I can slide under the radar, not get that letter and still do this.
Yeah.
But the fact that was the biggest obstacle would blow a Lutheran's mind, what's the Lutheran church going to think about this? Like, why do you care?
Yeah.
I had a friend that said, listen, attendance isn't compulsory. Like, I'm like, are you still Lutheran? Well, yeah, I don't have to go to church to be a Lutheran.
Yeah.
I guess I am. Attendance isn't counted.
Yeah.
It's not part of the program.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I haven't gone to church because of COVID for a year and I don't feel Mormon anymore. Like,
Yeah.
people have assumed I've moved or been, struck down or will be. It's so interesting that even at this, when I haven't been living as a Mormon for years, but in the shadows, and that was the one thing that would keep me from kind of potentially like the biggest opportunity in my life that had ever crossed my life to this path. I would have turned it down to remain in the shadows and to toe the line as a good Mormon girl, even if I didn't live it or believe it. I would have done that for the glory of the church.
Beautiful. The good news is I've been friends with some Mormon celebrities. So like Dan Reynolds of Imagine Dragons and Tyler Glenn, they don't excommunicate celebrities because it's really bad PR. So you're probably
I think you're safe too.
Yeah, you're probably safe.
You're in. I'm in.
Yeah, because how awful would that look, right?
Yeah.
It'd be global news. Yeah, they'll excommunicate.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Good to know.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure.
We're not done with you.
I know, but I'm ready to turn the time over
Okay,
now
take
to
some
Sister
breaths.
Nord.
Sister Nord. Okay.
Hi.
So you met this cute boy, you got married.
Yeah,
and
we
let's
got
talk
married.
about the living the dream.
Okay. Well, the dream was short-lived. I hate to say.
So did you believe all the things she believed?
Absolutely.
So that could have been your testimony.
That could have been my testimony
good.
too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So just all
I resonate with all of that. I was a full true believer. No questions asked.
Anything else you want to add to it that was really important to you?
No. I
Okay.
think Heather and I had a similar, we've shared this, hopefully that won't reveal you, Heather, but I was such a believer and didn't question anything. And I think the only time that I had a weird like twinge of like, ooh, maybe I don't know if this feels good, was when I went through the temple. I'd taken out, or I had received my endowment. I loved it. Like some people talk about the temple being weird, but like I was just like, this is real life.
Yeah.
The earth is weird. This is what it's supposed to be. I loved it. I was just so thrilled to finally have my temple blessings, and I just loved it and was deeply moved and loved all of it. The only thing when I went through was when you had to do you allow to talk about this?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
When you talked about vowing to your husband.
So during the wedding, during the endowment,
Yes,
when
not during the sealing, but yeah, during the endowment, when Eve, has to obey Adam.
the husband covenants to hearken to God.
Yes.
And the woman
Covenants to hearken to the husband, which
Covenants.
has changed now. That
Yeah,
language
I've
has
heard
But when
that,
you
which
went
I'm
through, the
super
woman had
happy.
to covenant to hearken to
Yeah,
what?
because I went through in 2001,
Yeah.
and
You had to say what?
I had to vow to obey my husband
as he
Right.
obeyed God.
as he obeyed God. And that was the only thing, because God bless him, my first husband, but he was wild. And he was like not as into the church as me. And I knew that, and I knew the doctrine, and I was a really good Mormon, and he was kind of one of those that was like, oh, all right, like she's marrying that guy. But of course, he was a return missionary and all of the things,
You're
well-to-do
18,
family. Well, I was 21 by the
21,
time we got
okay.
married. But yeah, I was kind of like, he's getting me into heaven. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm getting us
Oh,
into heaven.
She had a feminist awakening.
I really
during the
did. Yeah,
temple ceremony.
that was the only thing that was uncomfortable to me. I didn't have a problem with the true order of prayer. I liked it. I liked everything about the temple. The one thing that my still small voice, my higher self, the Holy Ghost, whatever it was, that was like, knock, 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 Dre, this is going to be a problem for you. And of course, I shut it down. He's an amazing priesthood holder. Now that we're married, we're going to be on the straight and narrow. I've got him. He's going to do it my way, and we're going to be okay. But I do remember having that feeling in the temple. And then I kind of felt shame and felt badly for thinking that, because I'm like, oh, my husband's perfect and and he's going to get us there. But that was my one kind of like precursor.
And I had the same exact
You did too?
feeling, same exact moment. And we both kind of like remembered thinking, well, yeah, we're going to pretend, but like, we all know that the woman is the neck and she turns the man of the head, whichever direction she wants. Like, I'm going to have to pretend that he's the one.
Yeah.
But it's going to be me. And it was the same for my mom. It's the same for it's like, oh, this is the great lie, that we are pretending to hearken to them, but we're really running the show.
Was that said? Was that spoken?
Never.
No, but it is. I had a phone call with my sister a couple days ago, who's still a very devout Mormon. And without getting into it, she just said, well, we all know, like, I tell men what to do all the time, is what she kind of said. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not actually in charge of them. You realize that,
we don't
right?
hold the priesthood.
Yes, I was. I was in Stake Young Women's. You're in charge of women, like you don't organize men. You don't lead men. You do not direct men.
Yeah.
You're not a Sunday school. You're not anything co-ed.
But I think how we felt in those moments in the temple was like, but we're above it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay, yeah,
Superior.
he's got the priesthood, but like, we all know that like we're the righteous ones.
Interesting.
And I had a major superiority issue when I was in the church. It was the worst. But like, I even felt that in the temple with my own husband
As did I.
I've got this. I'm getting us to heaven, not him. And as long as he goes along and we do the church the doctrinal way that I was raised to live it, then we're going to be just fine. And
it's the promise. It's like it's a covenant. We're covenanting for our own happiness,
mm-hmm.
If you're obedient, you will be, blessed. If you are not, you have no promise.
Yeah.
And we were going to be obedient.
Absolutely. And I had no problem doing that. I was good at it, and it's all I knew. And I, gave up my internship and I went to work, and supported my husband to do a fake internship
And play video
and
games.
play video games. But I was a child. I was a very, very sheltered, young, dumb 21-year-old that knew very, very little about the world. And that in the first 2 years that I was married to my first husband, there were a couple things that happened. Number one, we were just going along our merry way, being fine, dealing with what normal 21-year-old married people deal with. And I got a phone call from my little brother, and he was in a panic, very, very upset. He was 14 at the time. And he said, I just found a note from my mom. I found a note from mom, and I think she's going to kill herself. And that shook me because we had the perfect family. My, married in the temple, 4 kids, well-to-do, living in Alpine. My mom was beautiful, popular, well-liked. My dad was successful. And that was news to me of why my mom would even possibly be so unhappy that she would want to end her life. And so we luckily, thank heavens, were able to find her. Well, actually, some friends and neighbors found her. And when she talked to us about it after kind of things had settled down, she told us, I just can't be a good Mormon. I'm never going to get to the celestial kingdom. It's never going to happen for me. I keep messing up. All of the things that I am are not good enough. And so it's better for me to just go telestial, because if I end it now, at least I'll go to telestial. And that's probably where I belong.
Tell listeners what telestial means.
So it's the third and lowest kingdom.
So describe heaven.
Of the kingdom. Okay, so the heaven is the 3 kingdoms of glory.
In Mormonism.
Yeah. Top kingdom is celestial.
That's
middle.
That's what Heather was talking about.
That's the goal. That's
the
the
one
place
you
where
wanna go
God
to.
resides. It's a revolving globe of glass and fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it's the best place. It's where we want to be. Terrestrial is the middle kingdom. It's like for the so-and-so goods, I guess.
The meh.
Yeah, the middle ground. The good Christian people
That didn't join the Mormon church.
that didn't join
That failed to accept the gospel here on earth, and then also refused it when they were in spirit prison.
Yeah. And
by the way, who's gonna be up there with God and refuse it? It's kind of a weird teaching, right? But
And
anyway.
those hard hearts.
Right. And then the telestial kingdom is the lowest kingdom, which is still so good that you'd want to kill yourself to go
get there. Yeah.
So it's still awesome.
It's still awesome. It's still immensely better than this world, but it is the lowest.
You're not with
God. You're not with your family.
You're not. Let's say that again slowly.
You're not with God, and you're not with your family.
So you don't get to live with God.
Right.
And you're not in a family.
And I think if you're in celestial, you can visit the people
below you, but you can't
the
go
elevator
up. Goes down, but it doesn't go up.
They can't visit you.
Yeah.
It's a one-way door.
Yeah. But
that's what I always told you. I'd come visit you.
Dude, I'm outer darkness, so you can't come visit me.
I will let you into the celestial just for brunch.
Okay, perfect.
By the way, I don't think they really thought this through, because what if everyone makes the celestial? How are they going to keep everyone apart from each other?
I mean,
right? So I don't think we really thought that through.
No, definitely
take that back to the drawing board.
I think like, God, no, you husband and wife, you're both of the celestial, but you stay apart, because only the celestial kingdom can you actually be together. Makes no sense.
Right.
We don't think that through. Anyway, keep going. So your mom, I don't mean to take this off your mom.
No, not at all.
Your mom.
Yeah. So my mom had really just come to the fact that it was better for her to just end it, leave her 4 children and husband with a death by suicide mom, and go to the celestial kingdom, because there was nothing she could do to get to the celestial kingdom as hard as she tried.
What was making her feel so inadequate?
It's funny, because I actually talked to her this morning. And I was asking her, because it's been 17 years since that happened. And I said, Mom, I want you to go back to when you were standing on that mountain about to jump. What were you thinking? And she said, I was thinking, I have no value. Everything I've been taught to do and everything I've been taught to be, I just can't be it. I can't do it. And she said it was actually a Relief Society lesson that the sister in our ward who was teaching it they were talking about eternal marriage. And she said, if you're unhappy in your marriage now, you just got to stick it out because you'll be happy on the other side. And quoted Brigham Young in talking about, how basically it'll all work out when you get to the other side. Just stick through it because eternal marriage can be happy as long as you are following the principles of the gospel. And my mom was in a deeply unhappy marriage. And for her, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the last thing on the shelf was, okay, I have to face eternity with a person that I don't want to be with. And divorce was not an option. And so it would rather be death than to shake the boat. That was the better option for her. And that was really when I started my faith crisis.
So one quick thing before we jump there.
Yeah.
And this is for both of you. What are all the ways that a woman can feel inadequate in Mormonism?
How can we not?
No, really, rifle them off.
Okay.
Body.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Not having a great body, like small,
your outward appearance.
Yeah, your physical appearance, your inability to get pregnant, your fertility, your lack of fertility,
Okay.
your inability to bounce back after baby.
You guys go back and forth.
Breastfeed, yeah.
Yeah, I think to support your husband to be successful.
Okay.
To be a nurturing, diligent mother with successful, well-balanced, righteous children.
Stay close to your parents at the same time as raising your own children.
Your home is a temple on earth. The holidays are a time of great rejoicing and joy, and you're a good cook. You're good at, you keep your home, it's a house of order.
Yep. Yeah. But then also maintaining like a great social standing, nurturing your friendships and being active in your ward calling, being known as the person in your ward that is the go-to for, fun parties and for
you're always in a
great
executive
crafts for
role,
your kids. Yeah.
What do you mean?
You're never a nursery worker. You're either young women's president or young women's presidency. You're Relief Society president, Relief Society presidency. You're gospel doctrine teacher, which is very rare to be a woman and a gospel doctrine teacher. But
you were,
which I was.
Wow.
And I was just all of those things. Your ability to craft, your ability to sew, your ability to cook, your ability to clean, your ability to not only do all these things, but to love doing them. And to feel fulfilled doing them.
You have to love it.
And to feel satisfied doing them and to do them with a song in your heart and a smile on your face and to feel it, to not fake it. Nobody, to feel it and to embrace it, to be a domestic goddess.
And certainly we're not speaking for all women of the church. This is just Heather's and my experience, which was very, very similar.
You are speaking for a lot of women.
Well, I think a lot.
What about your husband? What about pleasing your husband?
Oh, well, you have to want to have sex all the time and be like a total.
What do you mean by that?
Like just on the ready. And you have to, it's like lady in the streets, freak in the sheets. Like you have
Angel
to be
in the kitchen, whore in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Like I'm the never say no girl.
Oh,
I would
same.
never say
say
no to my
by
husband.
that?
I would never turn my husband down for sex. It wouldn't matter if he wanted it in a car, in a bar. He didn't. And maybe that's why I was the never say no girl. But like I was able to effectively have sex anytime, any place, any condition, even if I had had the flu. You know what I mean? Normally it doesn't coincide, but you know what I mean? I would have. Like I used to, when I was newly divorced, I'd say, if you want to a partner, you want someone that's been married, because wives have sex with bad breath, postpartum, depression, snot on their faces. Like they can drop down and do it anytime, any place, anywhere. Cause that was my divine role.
Yeah.
I would never have said
Heather.
no.
Okay, Dre, what was your version of that?
Same. Never say no. And if I did say no, there was huge shame. And so then I just didn't say no. Like that was just the expectation. If we waited all this time and we were virgins and we, didn't do anything bad. And so now let's open the floodgates. And now this is my reward for being so virtuous.
And isn't it so much better that we only know it with each other?
I hated it. It was the worst.
Okay. Yeah. So so I'm sure there's some Mormons who have great sex lives and some Mormons that don't have great sex lives.
It depends on the couple.
But for you guys.
Well, I thought I had a great sex life because I had nothing to compare it to.
So you were happy. You were fulfilled.
I mean, yeah, for what I knew, in the context of what I knew, if you've never eaten outside of, a McDonald's, does it satisfy your hunger? Absolutely. Is it, and I wouldn't know,
Good analogy.
For you, Dre?
No, sex was a terrible experience for me.
Why?
I think I was, like I said, a very young, dumb, inexperienced child. And I had no business going from 0 to 60. I was someone that needed years of prep for this. It was too much and it was scary and it wasn't fun and it was shameful for me.
Why?
And because I felt like dumb and like I didn't know how to do it and it didn't feel good to me. And then my husband would say, "Well, you're such a Mormon." And then there was shame around that, like, "Oh, I'm just being a Mormon." But in to his credit, we were virgins, and I'm sure he was frustrated with me. Like, come on, we waited all this time, and now you're gonna, not want to just immediately have sex with me right this second all the time, because he was a 22-year-old boy. Of course, that's what he wanted. But for me, I needed some time. It was really tough for me, and I never got it while we were married. It was never easy for me, and there was a lot of shame around it. And also, I think there was just shame for me around sex in general because I just thought it was bad.
Because you're taught growing up what?
That it's the worst sin, worse than murder.
Yeah, it keeps
To
you
what?
out of
To have
heaven.
sex outside of wedlock.
Right.
And even though we were having sex within the marital bounds, it was really tough for me to shift my thinking. It really was. So that was never
So once you're able to have sex, you still feel what?
shame.
About
And like
sex?
it was bad. Yeah, like it was bad. And that it was not okay for me to express myself that way even. I was never taught how to
You're not a
express my
sexual
way.
being as a Mormon
No.
woman. What are you?
Just holy and perfect and virtuous and
And
Mary.
and a
Yeah, and
creative
yeah.
being. You're like a life-bearing being,
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Any other expectations of Mormon women? We could probably go on all day, but any other important ones?
I think the hardest thing is to love it. Because we can do it all. You know what I mean? Like we can do the dishes
We have
begrudgingly.
babies.
We can have babies, we can dress them and make sure they're at school on time, but to love it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where the shame comes in. Like, I love my children. I do not like the menial work surrounding what it takes to keep them alive every day, and that it is 100% solely my responsibility. And that it is also a reflection of my character and my worthiness, my ability to sing while I do the dishes, when I really just want to be on my phone, on my bed,
Mhm.
and to not love it. And so I would try to find ways to love it. And that's like fitting a square peg in a round hole, because that's where I think we really herald Mormon women. They do it, but they do it with a smile. They are genuine. We recognize like the doldrums of domesticity, right?
Mhm.
But if you're a true, if you're, if you've got your priorities in the right place, you are devoted to your children and to everything surrounding them, and you're happy. You don't feel a gnawing like, oh, did you hear that band of lawyers running wild outside? You know what I mean? Or do you hear
Yeah.
those business women clicking in their heels?
Yeah.
You have date night and you
And you
have
live
your
for
life
it.
and you live for, and you live to I'm losing my lashes. I'm crying so much. You live, with this joy of service, joy of your calling, joy of your husband. And like a lot of times you have to truly detach. Like when I just sat here saying, I never said no, how is that intimacy? I couldn't ever even tell my husband what I was thinking or feeling. The fact that he didn't care what I was feeling is lack of intimacy. And the whole reason you have sex is to be intimate.
Mhm.
And I used to think that made me such a cool pioneer woman that I never said no. But you know why you never said no? Because nobody ever asked you either way. You know what I mean?
But also, you never say no because you don't want to piss off your husband.
And you don't want to
disappoint
have
him.
a peg for him to hang his cap on for why you
Mhm.
are something to say, you know?
Totally. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on women in the church to show up a certain way. And my mom's living proof of that. She literally was willing to end her life because she could not live up to the standards, whether self-imposed or not. You know, they were what she felt.
So these were the types of things pressuring,
Yes.
bearing down on your
Yes.
mom.
But then on top of that, you know, she was a sinner. And it would even the things that she was telling me on the phone today, I was like, these are ridiculous that she would go to Coffee and Cocoa in Provo and order a cappuccino mixed with hot chocolate and just tell us it was hot chocolate, but then suffer huge, horrible guilt and then beat herself up about it and have to repent and have to, you know, I've broken the word of wisdom. It's such a silly thing, you guys. It's a drink that makes you a little
But
buzzed
it
for
keeps
20
you-
minutes.
What people don't understand is it can keep you from getting married in the temple, which can keep you out of the celestial kingdom.
Yes.
It can,
There are no small sins.
yeah.
I'm so sick of a lot of people since I started doing the show being like, oh, we weren't like that. We drink, my dad drinks hot coffee all the time and he still goes to the temple. Yeah. And I'm like, well,
Then you're not following the doctrine.
then guess what?
that wasn't how we were raised.
That's
yeah.
not, and
No.
that's, and,
Yeah. By
and
the
she's
way-
like, it depends on your bishop. Well, I want to move where you live. That's not a true and guiding principle then.
I'm 51. I've still never tried alcohol or cigarettes or any type of drug. I have
Well,
tried
I mean,
coffee.
John, you're missing
crack
out.
was
I have tried
open,
coffee.
John. We got some in the car.
No, I know. But I'm just saying that's how it's so in me that I
Yeah.
still haven't wanted to try those things yet.
Totally.
But I mean, yeah, coffee, tea, I would have never. Like one time I I was playing basketball with some friends. I saw a little jug of some brown stuff. I thought it was like root beer or whatever. It was tea. I was mortified. I
Yeah.
spit it out. Like, you know, just
get it
because
out
like,
of my mouth.
this is bad. You know, it was just tea.
Yeah.
But it's that serious, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So your mom was drinking coffee.
So my mom was like every once in a while going to Coffee and Cocoa in Provo. And, you know, but then more than that, it really was the Relief Society lesson of facing eternity. And that was too much for her. And I think when that happened, obviously there were a lot of other things that were part of that are private that I
Yeah,
can't share, but
that's right.
but I had kind of that come to Jesus moment where I thought, okay, do I really want to be a part of something that would cause the person that I love and respect the most in my life, who I think is the very best human on
She
this
was a good
earth?
mom.
She was a wonderful mom and righteous, really righteous.
And feeling like dirt.
Yeah. Is this okay for me to be a part of this? And part of my mom's therapy after the suicide attempt, she was exploring outside of the church. Her therapist just said, gosh, well, maybe the answer is to not worry so much about being a good Mormon. Maybe you can just be a good person and let's start there. And
But the best people are Mormon. That's what would always get
That's
me
the
back.
mindset.
I know
What do you mean, Heather?
Just like, but how can I be a good person if I'm betraying my faith?
it's still a lower level.
Yeah.
It's still, but like,
Wouldn't the best person just live, you know,
yeah,
and succeed under these principles?
but that's the thing is that my mom was the best person. And that's what shook me is I was like, whoa, if this person isn't good enough, I'm screwed because she's amazing and she's tries. And isn't that what it's about is trying and it still wasn't good enough. This is a person who has so much value that feels that she has no value. How can this be good? And I think that in her therapy, it was, okay, let's take Mormon off the list. We're not even going to deal
She
with
got
that
a
right
rare
now.
therapist in Utah.
Yeah, it was a blessing for sure and saved her life truly. And so let's not worry about being a Mormon. Let's worry about being a good person and let's start there. And and I remember she came out to Virginia to visit my husband and I. We were living out there and she wasn't wearing her garments.
Tell people what garments are.
So garments are the sacred underwear that Mormons wear when they receive their endowment, and it's, you know, protects you, and it's a reminder, an outward reminder of our inward feelings.
Are they sexy?
Oh no. No.
Burdensome.
What, just describe.
Yeah, so they are like a cap sleeve top with, and some of them have a scoop neck, so you can get away with wearing like a V-neck or something a little sexier, and a cap sleeve, so no tank tops, and then kind of like a biker short.
To your knee.
Yeah, to your knee. I would always get the extra small.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways around it, but
So-
it is supposed to be like the symbol is at your knee.
Yeah.
Every
So
knee
what
shall
about
bend.
miniskirts?
Yeah. Oh no, those are not
or
happening.
short shorts?
No.
Well, women find ways to get around it, but they'd rather wear garments inappropriately and be wearing them than.
So what's
and
the workaround?
The workaround is you buy
Extra
3 or 4
small.
size smaller, and you also buy petite because it's cut shorter from the waist to
Mhm.
the crotch, so you can hike them up.
But
more.
I know like now a lot of people will just optionally wear garments.
Garment optional is like a
And
new thing.
Yeah, and like
That's
oh,
new,
I'm
right?
wearing this outfit
Very
for my blog post or for my Instagram picture.
Well, this is
or
my
whatever.
job. And if I were a swimmer, I wouldn't be wearing garments when I swim. And my
Exactly.
job is to model clothing. So I don't wear garments for this picture, but I wear them when it matters. you
Right.
know?
But that was not the kind of Mormon I would get the extra smalls. I'm not going to lie that I would do that, but I would never wear a tank top. I would never wear shorts. I would never say like, oh, these are the shorts that I'm going to wear today with regular underwear. I didn't own regular underwear. I just wear my garments.
Yeah, I still barely own regular underwear.
I know. I'm so sorry. But my mom, when she showed up,
Does she wear garments?
No.
Okay.
but it's like a new, like it's weird.
Yeah,
for
like
you.
I have my daughter's underwear. Like I can't I don't think I could I don't know.
You're not fully committed to
It's hard.
regular
It took
underwear.
me years.
Yeah,
It's like 10
just-
years before I stopped wearing garments after I stopped believing. It's like 10 years.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
just it's
Yeah. But yeah, the
It's
garments
weird.
thing was weird. And it was very triggering for me to see my mom. I noticed she raised her arms
So what,
to do something and I could see that
But
she
she
wasn't
didn't have
wearing
one.
garments.
what did that mean to you when a devout Mormon mom is not wearing her garments? What does that mean to you?
Oh, I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's going on with mom. And I knew she had already tried to kill herself. And I was like, what is happening? My
Didn't you
world,
feel-
I threw up. I ran to the bed. I
What?
was so upset. I got myself so worked up that I threw up.
Because of her underwear.
Because of my mom's underwear. That is crazy, first of all. But that's how deep I was in it. And I got really upset with her and actually yelled at her. I remember sitting in my kitchen in my apartment and saying, Mom, what makes you so special that you don't have to wear your garments? And she said, Dre, what makes you so special that you get to wear your garments and be so much better than me? Are you better than me?
Oh.
And I was
And this is
like,
after she had attempted.
yeah. And again, I had to check myself, say, gosh, do I really want to be a part of something that is telling me that my very favorite person in the world who I'm obsessed with and want to be like, now she not only wanted to kill herself, but now I think I'm better than her. Do I really, really want to be a part of that? And so that happened. I ended up moving home because then my parents decided to divorce because my mom was leaving the church. And
Is that why?
Mm-hmm.
Your dad's like, I'm not
Yeah.
doing
And
this.
she gave him she said, I'm going to leave the Mormon church. We can stay married.
To save her life.
To save her life. It was not healthy for her at all. And he wanted to stay in the church. And so they decided to divorce. And I moved home to help with the divorce because, I was an adult and I was also pregnant with my oldest daughter. And I was studying in school. Well, I don't even know if I was going to school at the time. I think I was fake going to school. I liked to think I was going to school, but it was as soon as after I have this baby,
right.
Then, and after John gets his degree, then
I'll go back.
I'll go back. But I always had a passion for Middle Eastern culture. I grew up, like I said, in a predominantly Arab and Persian area. I loved DC. I always thought we'd go back to DC.
Did you know Omar Cater and Nancy Cater?
No,
Okay.
Where at?
There's a Mormon Stories episode that's one of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
Well, Omar Cater was born in the West Bank,
Oh,
but moved to Provo. So he or his dad was born in the West Bank, and so this is like an Arab family growing up in Provo, Utah.
wow.
And he went back and became like a big wig. He knew Yasser Arafat,
Okay.
So he was a Palestinian. He married a white Mormon woman. He was a professor at BYU. Then they kicked him out. Like, it's a great Omar Cater and Nancy Cater, great episode. He was a
Yeah, I'll have
DC
to listen to
Arab
it.
Mormon.
Okay.
So I just thought you
Yeah.
might have heard of him. but-
I mean, I'm
You heard of
surprised that I
Yasser
haven't.
Arafat?
Oh, yeah, a little bit. But anyway, that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to study ancient texts. I wanted to study, I loved
Just
everything.
Study the Book of Abraham. You'll
Well,
be fine.
but dude, I did though. That was my favorite book.
What was?
Book of Abraham.
Tell our listeners what that is.
So it is the first book in the Pearl of Great Price,
Which
and
is what for Mormons?
so it's a separate little part of the canon of
Scriptures, right?
of the triple combo of the Book of Mormon. It's not
Doctrine and
Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price.
Yeah.
And the Pearl of Great Price was found. Well, so Joseph Smith found these scrolls, and he translated them.
Mummy scrolls.
Mummy
right?
scrolls, yeah. It was on a traveling bandwagon kind of wagon show of Egyptian artifacts, which was so popular during those times. And at the time, actually, the Egyptian hieroglyphic code had never, the Rosetta Stone hadn't been found, and the code had not been cracked. So nobody could actually translate Egyptian hieroglyphics at the time. So when Joseph Smith got a hold of them, he was like, I know exactly what this is. I'm going to translate it. And this is what it is. It's the Book of Abraham, the Book of Moses. What else? Is that it? Just those two?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
because that was Joseph's big thing, is that part of how he got his reputation was that he was a seer, that he could look into the stone and translate ancient languages.
yes.
And that's what he did with the Book of Mormon. He got these golden plates that had Reformed Egyptian, and he had the power to see into the stone in the hat and then to translate the Book of Mormon. And now he's got these papyri.
Yeah.
And he's going to do the same thing with them.
Yes. And
right?
so that's why I actually loved it even more than the Book of Mormon. Even though I loved the Book of Mormon, I loved the Book of Abraham because it talks specifically about the discovery of Egypt, which I was, so in love with Egypt. And it was, the daughter of Ham, Egyptus, and it was named after, Egypt was named after Egyptus. And it was my favorite story in the scriptures. And I know it was rough. So but I loved the ancient texts, but I loved all ancient texts, but specifically I did love the Book of Abraham because it spoke to me and because it was part of my belief and
the
because
teachings too in it?
Yeah, the teachings as well. Yeah. And but I really just loved the history of it. And so of all of the ancient texts, that was my favorite, but I loved all of them. I did not, I liked all of them. So I remember I was sitting in my bedroom and I was studying an ancient Egyptian text. I'd gone over to the Barnes and Noble by BYU off of university, and somebody had recommended some books if I was going to be preparing to go into an Egyptian program at BYU. And he had recommended these books. And so I was looking through and I was studying them, and I recognized some pages. And I was reading them and I'm like, okay, where have I seen this before? And it's these funerary prayers and talking about the death rituals and all of this. And I was like, where have I've read this before? And it dawned on me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know what this is. This is exactly the same. Like,
were they the facsimiles?
Yeah, this is the facsimiles.
The
and
Egyptian hieroglyphs that are in the Book of Abraham.
They look like primitive drawings or like cave drawings, really, of like that are actual images in the Pearl of Great Price in the Book of Mormon.
And they're just like copies of what the scrolls said, but they're all in hieroglyphics. And I was very confused because the book that I was reading was telling me that this was funerary prayers, and I was like, this is wrong. Someone got this wrong.
That the Pearl of Great Price was wrong. It was like, this is wrong.
Absolutely not.
Instead of being like God and Jesus and whoever, Abraham or Moses or whatever, it's like Anubis and Isis.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. They got this wrong.
Yeah.
Those Egyptologists translated that papyrus wrong.
I really did.
Someone needs to show them the Pearl of Great Price.
No, I was upset because I was like, they can't be publishing this. How are they're teaching this in school? And this is wrong. And I went and got my Pearl of Great Price and I opened it up and sure enough. And I was like, well, I'm going to debunk this. Dre Robinson, I am going to, I just got to let these Egyptologists know they've got it all wrong. And that truly sent me down the rabbit hole. because then I started doing some research and I learned about the Rosetta Stone. I knew about the Rosetta Stone, but I learned about the timeline of the Rosetta Stone and how that coincided with Joseph Smith's translation of the Pearl of Great Price. And then I, read, there was no CS letter at the time, but I read the Smithsonian letter, and that was
Which said what?
Which said, because I guess there was a rumor like in the 80s or something that like the Smithsonian was using the Book of Mormon and like church documents to try to like find historical sites.
In Central America.
Yeah. And so Smithsonian came out and said, absolutely not. That's not what we're doing. And these are the reasons why. And it was a little kind of like a bit of a CES letter junior that kind of pointed out the reasons why they would never use the Book of Mormon and why it was historically inaccurate. And it was very upsetting to me because not
and what
only
year and how old are you? How old are you?
So I was pregnant. So I was 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
2002.
Okay.
And it was devastating to me. I was, first of all, wrong. And I was not used to being wrong. I was always right. And I was tricked. And I cringe when I even look at my Book of Abraham. It's highlighted and noted and every footnote and researched. And I thought, oh my God, all of this time that I've been doing this and it's not even real. And I felt so dumb. And smart girls don't like to feel dumb. And I felt really dumb and tricked and lied to. And I was disappointed in myself because
what'd you conclude that led to the disappointment? You were dumb. Why?
Oh, because I didn't realize that it wasn't real.
Like Joseph Smith made it up?
That it was made up. Yeah, that there was no historical basis that ever would prove that the Book of Mormon would be true.
So your Book of Abraham stuff bled into the Book of Mormon.
It was all of it, all at once. And so my whole entire world came crashing down.
Can I just quickly say why you weren't dumb?
Yes, please.
So I, John DeLynn, lost my faith in 2001, right? I was 31 years old and I'd been in the church all my life. Now the internet had been created, but there was no Mormon Stories podcast. There was no CES letter. There was no Mormon Think website. There was none of this stuff. None of these, no year of polygamy, no John DeLynn, no Kate Kelly, none of that stuff, right? And the only way you can learn about this stuff is in like certain books that you would never have heard of normally and that were totally forbidden if you had.
Right.
Or like through Sunstone or Dialogue magazine, which by then the church had denounced.
Yeah, I was not Sunstone at all. Yeah.
And so for you to go through this in your early 20s, right? In 2002-ish is a really big deal because there are people just now in their 60s and early 20s before the internet, the Mormon internet really exploded. Yeah. And I'm just going to say that's rare. That's rare. And that's actually commendable. I'm not trying to just blow sunshine up your shirt, but that's remarkable.
No, thank you.
And it takes courage to be willing. And I think probably your mom having that experience and leaving the church maybe cracked you open and made you open to that. Mm-hmm. But many, 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 many people like you, Heather, on your mission, there's a moment in time where you're like, wait a minute, is it even possible that this isn't true? And most Mormons are like, wait a minute, rewind. Yeah. There's no way it's not true. I'm going back on plan. It's a rare Mormon that can go, I'm actually going to keep pulling this thread and see what unravels because the stakes are so incredibly high. You didn't have to worry about losing the love of your mother, but you probably had to worry about what your dad was going to think. And then there's all your whole community, extended family, friends. It's a big deal. Yeah. So it is commendable that you were willing to keep pulling that thread.
Oh, thank you. And I certainly don't mean to disrespect.
And that's not to disrespect other people.
Yeah, no.
I was 31.
No, but me as who I was at the time, I felt deeply betrayed by myself, but also by my parents and especially my dad, because like my dad's so smart and he's so well educated. And I just didn't understand how he couldn't have caught this. And why didn't he figure it out first? And
because it's not an intelligence thing. Let me just be clear. It's not an
no,
intelligence thing. And I don't even mean to frame it as courage. You have to have the right life circumstances happen at the right time with
Yeah.
the right availability of information or the right influences in your life. And if all those things line up, but there are brilliant people that never figure this out, they go to their death and they're brilliant, like
Yeah.
literally brilliant. They didn't have the right people come into their lives or the right things happen with their parents. And sometimes it's just luck as well. So I don't mean to like belittle anyone who figures it out later or still hasn't figured it out. You know, because that would be us, Heather. It took us longer, right? But and not that there's one thing to figure out, because everybody's going to arrive at a different place. But but you I don't know if you feel fortunately, but you had the right circumstances
I
that
did.
kind of made you open.
Yeah.
Where others might not have
It's
been.
interesting to me, like the context that both of you are discussing, and because I'm thinking, like, you used the word luck, and you were like, you discovered this, like, and did you regret discovering it? Did you ever
Oh,
think, I
yeah.
want to not discover this, and like shut it and pretend I didn't hear it? It's like when you pick up the phone and your mom's talking to another man, hang it up, pretend you never heard it, go back to the blissful state of
Yeah.
contentment that you were existing in before you saw those funerary
Well, I
prayers.
think that's, I mean, exactly what it is, the right time, right circumstances, because I think had I not already been questioning, I think I probably would have just been like, whoop, don't go there. Just like I did in the temple. Figure out a way to talk yourself out of it. Or, you know, and even when I discussed it with my dad, you know, he just said, Dre, I just have to trust. I have faith.
God will work it out.
I
in the
know
end,
it doesn't make sense. I know it doesn't make sense. And you can give me all of your evidence, and I'm still going to believe that Joseph Smith translated that. And I don't know how. I don't know why hieroglyphics show that it's funerary prayers. I don't know why, and it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But to me, it mattered. And I think it mattered because I was already having that cognitive dissonance of, is this really who I am? Is this really what?
Wasn't working for you.
No, no. But I do think that because I went down that rabbit hole, gosh, it shook me, and it shook me fast, and I was out immediately.
While married.
Yeah.
How's husband taking this?
So he was like, I told him what I had found, and I said, I don't think I can be in the church anymore. And he said, okay.
That's fast.
Yeah, he was.
So he wasn't as devout.
He was not.
Yeah.
No, he was doing it for me, and we ended up getting divorced. You know, I think because we got married so
Well,
young.
I know why you got divorced. You stopped living the principles of the gospel.
But you know, we were each other's first boyfriend and girlfriend, and we knew nothing about life. And here we were, you know, 23 and 24 years old, and we had this baby, and now everything that our whole marriage was built on, we didn't believe anymore.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for us to realize that the kind of people that we wanted to be outside of the church were very different than like what would work for us. Like he wanted to be a different ex-Mormon than what I wanted to be. And it just, you know, it wasn't right for us. We were far too young to be married in the first place. And so we both left the church together. I'm really grateful we did, because it would have been immensely harder to do that alone. But once we were out of the church, our time was done together. And so we did divorce, and then I got to have the fun experience of not only being an ex-Mormon divorced person, but also a single mom.
When you say fun, do you mean it or not mean it?
No, it was, you know what? In retrospect, there were a lot of really fun things.
What was hard or unpleasant or whatever?
Disappointing my family. Yeah. And like losing all my friends. And
why?
Just because we weren't in the same group anymore.
Because you left the church, not because you got divorced.
Yeah,
was it both?
It was all of it. It was all of it. Because then, like, when we were married, we hung out with other married couples in our ward, and those were our friends. And then we leave the church. We're not going to the ward anymore. And then now we're divorced, so now I'm single.
Your friends, oftentimes couples don't want to hang out with singles.
No.
Yeah. All the time, John. They don't want to hang out with singles.
Oh,
yeah.
You come hang out with me and Margie anytime. Anytime.
But it was rough. And it was tough to navigate. But I'm going to be totally honest. The hardest thing was the family, disappointing the family.
Mhm.
And
Meaning your mom or your dad?
no, not my mom, because my mom had left, but my dad.
Yeah. Oh, about the church.
About the church.
Yeah.
And the divorce.
Yeah.
I was really scared
The
to tell
double
my
whammy,
dad
yeah.
that not only had I left the church, but also a few months later, sorry, Dad, getting divorced now. You
And
know,
what's hard is everybody's like, oh, of course you leave the church, you're going to get divorced. It's like, but they can be totally separate things. You can leave the church because it's not true and then get divorced because you realize you maybe never should have been married in the first place or got married way too young.
mhm.
But then Mormons just make that connection where it's just like, oh yeah, you stop
Yeah.
living the gospel, your marriage isn't going to last. So it's your fault because you didn't live the gospel, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Does that resonate with you, Heather?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? You know, like
Yeah.
you can't even decipher because, and also you can't be really happy. You can be caught up in the things of the world, but this isn't real happiness because you're not living the gospel.
Yeah.
So whatever fog the devil's put over your brain that makes you think you're content and happy and not suicidal anymore, that's ephemeral. It's going to fade because the foundation for happiness in this life is based upon the principles of the gospel and living them. You know, that's like the circular logic that I can't get out of.
Yeah. And it's tough to get out of that circular logic. And I remember thinking the same thing and having to start over. That's the biggest thing is like, if that's your whole identity, then it's like, well, then who actually am I? But I think that that's what was so beautiful about the whole experience is that like I got to invent that. And yes, it was on incredibly different terms. I knew I wanted to get my education. Why didn't I do that before? I didn't because
Because
culturally that was not part of my plan.
no one encouraged it.
No
Mine
one
was
encouraged
a
it.
default. Like I got it because nobody married me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was just plodding along, you know, with
Right.
no aimlessly, really.
Well, and for me, like, yeah, I did the MRS track, you know, I got married and had a baby and that's what I was doing. But once I left the church, I was like, okay, yes, I'm in a different situation than I had hoped. I'm a single mother now with no education and pretty much no life skills and very little self-worth. So
In Utah.
in Utah. So what am I going to do with that? And I'm pretty proud of what I did with it.
What'd you do?
So glad you asked. So I did go back to school. I went to the U. I studied Arabic and Middle Eastern studies.
What?
Yes. Again, I always thought I would end up back on the East Coast and I did not. But I got my degree and it took me a freaking long time because
How long did it take?
it took me like 6 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I was waiting tables in Park City and a single mom. Dad was out of the picture. And so I was doing it by myself. And dad, I'm meaning my first husband,
Yeah.
my daughter's dad.
Yeah.
And he was doing his own thing. And so I handled being the mom but I did it and I did school and
Okay. How do you, and I'm making an assumption here. How do you date, go to school and be a single mom?
I mean, that's why it took 6 years. But
And work.
and
You were
work.
working.
Yeah.
Were you doing all 4 things?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's just get this clear. Going to school, working, being a single mom, and maybe dating? Were you dating?
Yeah. Yeah, I was dating and
Was it fun? Was it scary?
was so fun because I had never done that.
Like having sex with different people?
Yeah.
Can you do that?
I mean,
Was that hard? Was it scary to figure that out? Because
Yeah,
we're not taught. I still don't know. Like I've had sex with one woman my entire life, one woman. I wouldn't know what to do in
Yeah.
a date. Like
it was
how to talk about that.
It's kind of like riding a bike, John. Yes, you figure it out.
No, I mean like talking about protection, talking about
Yeah.
like consent,
Being an adult about
talking
it.
about STIs, like
Yeah.
different partners. Like I don't, that's just like you don't know any of that stuff. Like,
No.
And
And
that's why it's a debaucherous world too. The divorcees dating, they don't, no one has an adult relationship with sex at all.
no. And
They
it's funny.
don't?
I was even telling Heather the other day, this is one of my biggest beefs with the church is that like I was never taught anything about sex, nothing. And so I had to learn that on my own. That could have been so dangerous for me. I am very shocked that I was not assaulted. Well, actually, guess what? I was assaulted on a date one
Oh.
time and it was awful. But see, I don't even consider that. I don't even consider it. But like, I didn't know anything. And so I didn't know how to protect myself. I had to learn by being in it. And
Was it awesome or awful or both?
both.
It was
I'm so grateful for it. But like, I hope that my daughter, of course, I don't like, she's in high school. I don't want her having sex.
okay. Wait. So Mormonism teaches wickedness never was happiness, and you were taught that having sex outside of wedlock was next to murder.
Yeah, it's
in
not
terms of
wickedness.
evil.
It's next to murder.
Yeah.
So you were. How did you get comfortable with that, knowing that you were doing, that your past self would say you're being evil?
I had let go of the religion though. I by that point, and see, I couldn't have been one that believed and then acted out. I would have had way too
Integrity.
much guilt and shame. Yeah, I just could not. But I would have just hated myself. But I think once I let go of the religion, and I definitely like went on a little bit of a spiritual journey, and I needed that. I don't even know where I stand now as 40-year-old me. But when I first left the church, I did kind of supplement with like, okay, I'm going to be really spiritual now. I'm going to pray all the time, and I'm going to be into astrology, and I'm going to, still believe in God and all of these things. It's just not going to be within the context of the church. And so I did have some foundation to like ground on with that. But I also found and considered my own sexual freedom as being very healing.
Was it good?
It was great.
It was healing?
Yeah, it was. Once I kind of got my
Like
footing,
wickedness, how can wickedness be healing?
because guess what? We are human beings.
What's healing about having multiple sexual experiences?
Well, because I realized that it wasn't bad and that it could actually be fun and that I was actually a sexual person,
Meaning what?
like that I could enjoy sex and not feel shame.
Right.
And
And let loose, right? And
yeah,
be creative and spontaneous.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that I could share something with someone that I was getting to know. I never, like, I wasn't into one night stands or anything like that, but if I had a boyfriend, it would go there. And it was actually really amazing and brought me connection and made me feel closer to that person. And to recognize that like this could be such a positive experience outside of the bounds of marriage and be enriching and not the worst thing in the world was so freeing. And I hope that my daughter does not, I hope that she gets to have some sexual experiences when the time is right.
Before marriage.
Before she gets married.
Right?
I
Isn't that
will.
interesting?
Yeah.
It's so un-Mormon, right?
Yeah.
To say that.
Yeah.
Super taboo.
But for me, if I would have had sex one time with my first husband, I would have
Before.
been like, before we got married, I would have been like, oh, that's a no from me, dog. Like, this is not going to work because
It's just incompatibility. Nothing about him.
absolutely.
It's
It
just
just, that was
incompatibility. Yeah.
not, it was not my thing with him. And so I think it's a huge disservice that the church does to women by not encouraging us to be sexual with the right and appropriate boundaries and timing in the right age, at the right maturity level, with the right person, all of those things. But I think it's a huge disservice that the church does to women by encouraging them.
Travesty. It's much bigger than a disservice because we're taught that like
Pull the mic
something
closer.
that
Pull
we're
the mic
not
a
in,
little bit closer. Sorry.
we're taught that something that we're not in charge of is what our intrinsic value is based on. You know?
Yes.
What do you mean? You're not in charge of it.
Well, it's when you are a woman and you're a virgin, you surrender your chastity. You give it up, right? You put out, like you're asking for it, like all the terms.
Mhm.
And that is us surrendering like our power, and our value is based on our abilities to submit. It's not even proactive. It's recessive, and we are not empowered with it, because once we've given it up, then we're taught we've lost our power. And so that's a pretty dangerous position to put our daughters in, to say, hold this sacred because all of your worth, both to God and to your community and to this family, are based on your ability to toe the line and not have sex. And then the second you do have sex, you are used up, you are damaged, you are blighted, we're taking away your title of virgin,
Chewed gum.
your chewed gum, your Electric Reese's peanut butter cup, and you have lost the thing that made you the most powerful. And
It's like Samson cutting his hair, right?
yeah,
Lost your power.
Mhm.
And now we're going to put you in a submissive relationship where you're going to have to fend for yourself. And the one leverage you had, you lost it. You know,
Yeah.
Your virtue.
go with God, little girl.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. I know we only have like 20 more minutes.
No.
but-
So what I was thinking is we could, like you said, maybe we could do a part 2. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You guys can come
Don't you
back?
think?
Yeah.
Does that work for both
Yeah,
of you?
totally.
Okay. So let's talk just, is there anything else you want to share just about like navigating life as a single mom before you meet Heather? Anything else
Took your name off the rolls.
before you meet Heather?
That's
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
significant.
Me and my ex-husband took our names off the records, but
That's
Big.
early and
it was
big.
really
Yeah.
early.
Like at
How'd you
22,
make that
she did that.
decision?
Yeah.
It was him.
What'd he say?
He was just like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. Let's take our records off.
Okay.
Did that scare you at all?
Like when I got the letter, yes.
What did it say? What does the letter say?
It was like made me sign that I'm okay to be in outer darkness,
It
essentially.
basically says you've lost all your privileges
Uh-huh.
and rights, and
Uh-huh.
you're signing away that position in the celestial kingdom. And
Mm-hmm.
as long as you just understand that, sign it away. You know.
Yeah.
Sign with blood. You prick your finger and sign with blood.
No.
Does it have pictures of like Johnny Cochran and Jeffrey Dahmer and
No, it
Hitler
had a
and the
picture-
people you'll be
You've seen
living
the
in
Book of
outer?
Mormon musical.
Yeah, a few
Heather.
times. Yes, absolutely.
No, it had a picture of the Savior and the
Same.
the bluish purpley one.
Eh,
The bluish purple.
You know, that's really beautiful.
yes, the handsome
Mm-hmm, the handsome
version.
one. Yeah, it had that and
non-Arabic.
and I don't think I would have done it if he hadn't. I know I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't afraid of going to outer darkness, but I was afraid of disappointing my dad.
Yeah,
That's the truth.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's not about like that. My name on a roll is going to keep me from eternal damnation. It's I don't want to be in that bucket because I don't know anyone in that bucket except for like Jeffrey Dahmer and Hitler and Johnny Cochran
And John DeLynn.
and
Yeah.
John DeLynn. Yeah. And like when she told me the story of, she said, and then he got a letter from the church and I was like, oh, like I literally like, I have like a clutch my pearls moment every time. Cause I'm like, that's big.
mhm.
That's big. It almost kept me from doing anything, with the show and with
Yeah.
everything. Cause
Yeah.
I must hold some belief,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but it's really to be eradicated from what created you. This is like informed every choice in my life. And I don't want to negate my mission, my friends, my community, all the service I rendered as a member of the church. I saw your post about like, thank you, for teaching my kids and like sacrificing your youth, and doing all these things. Thank you for doing that. It's like everything you've done to this point is now null and void because you didn't make it to the end.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to give up. And also I didn't have a future. So I was just like, well, all I have are all the accolades of being a great Mormon to this point, and then this bleak future, and it's like, and I'm going to lose both of them in the end.
But I think that that's why it's so important what we're doing in the ex-Mormon community of like,
I can't say I'm an ex-Mormon.
No, you don't
I
have
know,
to. You
no,
don't need to.
I'm saying we as in me and John,
Me and Dre.
is, a lot of us are quick to jump to anger and to just rejection of what we grew up with. That's what I did. I was really deeply angry and, like I said, wanted to crusade for everyone to leave the church. And it wasn't until I could work through some of those feelings and take a softer stance. And even today, talking to my mom, I was asking her what was the hardest thing about leaving the church. And she said, well, because I had so much love there. And I miss my friends. I miss those teaching experiences. She said, I have no friends now. And she said, I experience greater love now on a universal level because I realized that I was very restricted just to this small pool of the LDS church. And now I get to love humanity and think that humanity is good instead of just the church members are good. But that doesn't mean that I didn't feel deep love in the church and that I didn't have amazing spiritual experiences and that I am not who I am because of it. And I resonate with that. I've worked through my anger and I feel like now I'm in a place of like, gosh, I'm so glad that that's how I was raised in a lot of ways. There's some things that I feel pissed about still, but I learned how to pray. I learned how a personal revelation. What religions teach about that? Not, I don't think a lot of them do. And so I think that we get a leg up because we were raised in the church in spirituality, and connecting with God and source, universe, whatever you want to call it, or your higher self. And so there's a lot of beauty there. And I think that it doesn't have to be so black and white. We can say thank you next as Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande.
She's very grateful for what Pete Davidson taught her because we learned something. It's just like an old lover, it doesn't mean we hate them, but
they hate us.
but they do hate us. But
Who hates us?
I mean, well, right now, the most trolling I get is from the Mormons,
Why? What do they say?
just condemning me for breaking code,
Meaning
for
what? What
talking
things?
about Mormonism in an inappropriate manner. I mean, I don't think I'm ever trying to
I
disrespect
haven't
her.
seen you in the 4 episodes. I haven't seen you disrespect Mormons.
Well, there are
She
people that
hasn't,
think
but-
contrary to that.
she hasn't.
Okay.
But I think it's mostly I'm just not spinning it in a palatable way. I'm just saying this is the doctrine. Gays can't get into heaven. And gays can't participate in the church if they're actively gay. And they're
True.
like, we love everyone.
Yeah.
Spin it the other way. Oh, we love everyone, but we won't let you into heaven.
And I'm going to also dedicate 10% of my money
to conversion therapy and
Yeah.
to
going against gay marriage, to putting, flyers out in Arizona and California.
I'm going to stand on a corner with a sign that says, DOMA,
Right.
Defense of Marriage Act, or all these things. Like, there were times when that was part of our calling, that we were asked to do that. And that's just what I think people struggle with, is that I am breaking code and saying, listen, you've
acknowledged race issues in the church. That's a hard one for people. You've brought up the unfair treatment of gay people in the church. That's a tough one to look at.
And it's not the treatment, it's the doctrine.
It's the doctrine.
people
Yeah,
are
it's not the treatment.
wonderful.
You're right.
They're wonderful to a point, if they're not going to let you bless the sacrament or say a public prayer or work in the nursery, or teach a class, it doesn't matter how devout you are. You're going to still get invited to the fun parties,
Of course, you can still be considered part of the congregation, but doctrinally, it is not, there's no gray area there.
Yeah.
With the doctrine for homosexuality. And then also you've gotten a lot of blowback, thank you, about you stating that there is a standard of perfection in Salt Lake City because of the church.
And I don't understand why people don't understand the threefold mission of the church is to proclaim the gospel, perfect the saints, and redeem the dead.
So
This is
perfect the
not,
saints.
I didn't write that.
No,
That's why we're Mormons, to proclaim the gospel, perfect the saints, and redeem the dead. So what did I say that has been misconstrued?
No, and that's so important. I'll just say this really quickly. I don't want to take from what everything you guys are sharing is so beautiful. But I'll be honest. I am a prude. I am a conservative fuddy-duddy guy. I would have never watched Real Housewives. And I would have looked down on it as lowbrow, to be honest, right? Because that's just whatever. For whatever reason, I'm Mormon.
You're superior.
It's
Mormon. You're a white male.
Exactly. But I'm priesthood, it's lowbrow. It's not righteous. I still got all that in me. I still have a hard time watching a Quentin Tarantino movie. Oh, it's too much violence, too much swearing. That makes me uncomfortable. I'm still very Mormon. I'm the world's most Mormon ex-Mormon in the world. But what I did is I started taking notes on your awesome episodes. And I started writing down the themes that you guys were covering. And I'm like, are these Mormon themes? Are these Utah themes? Are these Mormon cultural themes, right? Alcohol, big issue. Swinging, big issue in Utah and Arizona and Idaho, where Mormons and ex-Mormons are. And active Mormons. Addiction. Utah freaking leads the nation in prescription drug use and abuse and addiction in so many areas. Superficiality, right? Plasticness, fakeness, right? Faith. Judging, fidelity, perfectionism, BYU, marriage, troubled marriage, polygamy, porn, traditional roles, and eating disorders. I drew some eating disorder stuff. I don't know if they talked
we'll
about
hit
that
it. Well, I'm sure we will. And slut shaming, honor code, what?
Exactly. Yeah. So like you guys are hitting so many important themes. And if anybody tells you you're not representing Real Housewives, you are representing the good and the bad, the dark and the light.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Those are important themes. If somebody tells you perfectionism, female perfectionism isn't a relevant Mormon Utah women theme, they're completely lying and deluding themselves. Sorry, that's my sermon.
Thank you for saying that, because we have heard otherwise.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Perfectionism doesn't exist. And we love gay people, and we love Black people, and we love, all
Right.
people.
Which of course they do. It's because they're wonderful people. Mormons are great. However, doctrine exists that is problematic if you are gay, a person of color, or a woman. That's just
what it is.
Just how you didn't write it.
I didn't write it, and I lived it, and I suspended disbelief to support it and proclaim it, and my money has gone to it to fortify it, and and now it no longer will. So now I've lost my ability to speak on it because of that.
No, you haven't. You are speaking on it. You're speaking out, and you're not. You have a very kind, I think, way of talking about Mormonism. I don't think it's mean-spirited. I don't think you're trying to take anything down. I don't think you're even trying to be critical, but I think you're just sharing your experience. That's what I get.
No, Heather's still full Mormon. Like that's what kills me is I'm like, you guys, she's like,
I'm one of you.
She's like going through this actively as we speak, questioning and struggling obviously with where to go from here. And it's really, really tough. And I don't think you're alone, Heather. I think a lot of people feel the same way as you.
Amen. But it feels like betrayal to an Orthodox Mormon.
And I guess, and I understand that, a betrayal to like the tried and trues, but a betrayal to the ones that don't even know what they're speaking out on, the ones that say there's a difference between the culture and the doctrine. Yeah, because you don't know the doctrine from your ass.
It's interesting to see who have been the most vocal people about disagreeing with Heather and her
I would love for them to disagree and have a discourse. They
judge and condemn. Yes.
Or talk about you behind your back.
Yeah. To me directly, they send me messages and they do public declarations of how I am, I'm just a horrible human being and obviously like damaging the church.
You are getting emails like that?
Yeah. I get DMs every day.
Oh no.
Well, John, have you not heard about the like influencer backlash?
From all the Mormon mommy bloggers.
From all the influencers, and some of not all, I shouldn't say all, because some were dear friends. Totally kind about it. But a lot of the big names, D-list celebrities in Utah had terrible things to say about Heather. And they're people that don't even know her. And it's always shocking to me how people, I know you experience it too, but like how people can jump to judgment and say things about someone that they've literally never met.
And they have more in common with me than anyone else on that show. And yet all of their venom is, targeted directly at me, which in a way lets me know that I'm triggering something. And you only trigger things when you hit on the truth. When I say Mormons have horns and tails, I won't get a DM. You know what I mean? Let's be like, oh, that's preposterous. When I say Mormons have a history of misogyny, and
they're like, what does
homophobia. They're like, they look it up and then they're like, you whore, you're betraying the faith.
Yeah. I think it's tough to be Mormon and especially a transitioning Mormon in the public eye. It would be really, really tough. In Utah.
On a show called Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
I mean, I don't know that you're like, that's why I'm so happy to do this interview. And I'm so happy you guys were willing to do this interview, because the show doesn't allow for you to show parts of yourself. The show's just not made to show all parts of you, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't mean to speak for
Yeah,
you,
they're
but
35-minute
like-
episodes.
and I'm not saying I'm surprised, but I knew this would happen, but I'm delighted that it's
showing
been so
his-
profound. You guys are wise, thoughtful, caring, sensitive, deep, articulate humans. And I'm just so happy that you're able to do that and tell your full story here. What are you feeling, Heather?
No, just, it's nice to hear nice things,
Yeah, Heather's amazing, and she's incredibly brave.
You haven't been hearing a lot of nice things.
I'm hearing wonderful things from like the gay community and the Mormon community of, I want to say a lot of disgruntled that would never leave, and a lot of ex-Mormons and a lot of Mormons, gay Mormons, a lot of Mormon marginalized Mormons,
But the
you know.
Orthodox ones.
and I mean, and it's, yeah. My family doesn't even speak of it. Like we don't even speak of it. So, it's just, it is what it is. It's not a forum to teach people about Mormonism, but you'd think people would have a little bit more compassion for anyone that's put in as much as you have to defending the faith, to maybe explore another option. But there's just absolutely no latitude. Hold the iron rod. The iron rod is the word of God. Will safely guide us through. Yeah.
Heather knows all the hymns.
Me too.
Yeah, I don't even need the hymn books, man.
Too.
Third verse, for
I'm
a
not
foundation.
that good. I'm not that good, but I can get most of them.
Yeah. In a way, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is not at all Mormon, and in some ways it's super Mormon, and it's both. It's shock value entertainment, and they're hitting on all the big themes. So, you Orthodox Mormons, if you think this is nothing about Mormonism, you're a little. With kindness, I say you're a little bit in denial, because there's so much Mormon there. So much Mormonism in this show.
As there should be, because it would be unjust to do a regional show
Yeah.
about Salt Lake
Yeah.
City without Mormonism
Yeah.
being a common thread,
Mhm. Yeah.
Just look deeper. Look deeper. The Mormonism's there. You will find it if you want to, if you want to see it. Okay, listen, you guys are so lovely. I've loved every minute of our 2 hours and 57 minutes together so far. And I'm just so thrilled you're willing to come back. So here's the thing, listeners. This is part one, but we've still got a lot to go. So we haven't heard about, there may be more about Dre's experiences as a single mom and what happens in her life, how she ends up meeting Heather, and how she ends up an entrepreneur after she was stranded as a single mom, waiting tables in Park City. Like, I'm all wanting to hear about that. And we got to hear about Heather's marriage. We got to hear about living the Mormon dream. She was a Mormon housewife, and then what happened to her marriage and how it fell apart. And then how she met Dre, how they started a wonderful business together that is successful and thriving. And then how did Heather have a faith crisis? And then there's some Real Housewives stuff that we might touch briefly on, but that's for the show. So if they want to hear, if you want to watch the show, how do they watch the show?
It's on Wednesday nights on BravoTV, or you can stream it at any time, or get it on YouTube or Hulu. But it's on Bravo every Wednesday.
So fun. Heather's the funniest and the coolest. Was my favorite housewife.
And the most polarizing, as I should be.
You guys are awesome. Well, thank you so much for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
having
Thanks
us,
for
John.
having
This is
us.
so
I'm looking
awesome.
forward to part 2.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I want to stay all day.
I know. We're cursing that we have children
We have
right now.
a drill team performance to head to.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'd
Because
stay.
you actually are Real Housewives.
We
or
are
at
real
least
moms and real housewives.
I'm not a housewife.
We call her an FO. She's a friend of.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you very soon.
We'll see you
And-
next
and-
time.
And listeners, thanks for joining us today on Mormon Stories. You're awesome. Email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. Give us your comments. Share this with everyone. And come back, because we're going to have part 2 with Heather and Dre, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much. See you guys again soon.